everyone, and welcome back to another episode of OHKO, a Pokemon VGC podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the Victory Road World Cup, as well as the super cool, super special OHKO team that is in progress. Talk a little bit about teams we'd like to build in the future, and of course, later on, we're going to have super special guests on the broadcast. That is going to be our Toronto Regional Champion, Chuppa. So that'll be super, super exciting. My name is Sierra Dawn, one of the hosts, joined by my co-host, Joe Brown. How are we doing this fine? I guess it's Tuesday at the time of recording. How are we doing this fine Tuesday evening?
Don't let the audience know it's Thursday at noon right now for as far as we know, Sierra. You never know. But no, I'm fine. I've been going through the ringer a little bit the last couple of weeks, but the light at the end of the tunnel, I see it, not in a death way, in a progression way, like moving on to the next stage. I'm excited for it. We are, as of recording, less than a week away from traveling to Brazil, right? So that's creeping up on us. I'm nervous about that. I got to figure out what outfits to bring and stuff, what to be prepared for in Sao Paulo. But, everything's going well.
You say, like, the light at the end of the tunnel, but not in a death way, but the job that you're currently working has you waking up at 7 a.m. So, like, are you sure about that?
Yeah, and I take the train every day, right? So I do go into the tunnel every day. I make it out. Importantly, I make it out. But some mornings I do the other day I literally I was so tired on the train. So I had my phone on and the League of Legends World Championship's been going on, right? So obviously I'm not going to stay up till 5 a.m. to watch the best of 5 because I have to get up. So I've been watching it on the train. And I'm just shh, and my phone just falls on the ground. I'm like, oh, I'm so stupid. Why did I do that? Blah, blah, blah. And literally 4 times, I was so tired. I kept dropping my phone on the floor. And you would think I would just try to stop watching the match if I was that tired, but I never learned my lesson.
And it's all the same people around you, just watching you
every
drop
day,
your phone over and over, and not learning your lesson. That's dreadful.
It's tough times.
It's tough times. There's somebody listening to this or someone on their way to work right now and it's 6 a.m. and they're like, these spoiled brats.
Yeah, I know.
They don't know.
All you posts are, I get up at 4:30 and I'm not used to this, all right? I'm not an early person. I used to work a job at nights for 6 years, so I would get up at 2 in the afternoon every day. I'm not a 7 a.m. kind of guy.
See, living in Canada, I used to be a supervisor at Starbucks. I had to be up. I only worked the morning shifts. I had to be up at 3:30, putting in the midst of negative 20 Celsius with wind chill. There's 2 feet of snow on my car that I have to scrape off. I've done that in my life. So now I will happily sleep till whatever hour I want to. And I will never hear a peep about it because I've gone through that terrible waking up early.
What time did you go to bed at 8 p.m. or something? When would you go to bed for that job?
Early 1 a.m.
Sierra, no, that's not how that's supposed to work.
How was supposed to work? What? So basically, the schedule is I would fall asleep at roughly 1 a.m. I'd wake up at 3:30 a.m. Hey, sometimes 3:50. I had to be at work for 4 a.m. Dreadful. I'd have the keys to the store. Sometimes we were late. My bad. Did get in trouble for that. But I would work 4 until 9:30 a.m. And then I would get home and I would nap for 2 hours and then I would stream until 10 p.m. There was a few times where those 2-hour naps turned into 6 or 7 hour long naps and I'd miss stream.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Then I'm not tired. Then I go to bed at 1. We rinse and repeat. But it was also a Monday to Friday type job. So it's you have the weekends to recover sleep wise. So it's okay. Okay. It could be worse.
That's crazy. I don't know if I'd be able to function in that way. Go to bed at 1 for my 3:30 alarm. I think I'd cry.
A little bit of that sometimes. Yeah. But I was also going to work at a coffee place. Caffeine consumption off the charts. There is definitely multiple caffeine induced anxiety attacks at work. and we would literally queue up like quad shots of espresso and let them cool a smidge and then do espresso shots on the floor at like 5 a.m. in the morning. So normally by the time 8 a.m. rush rolled around was normally probably 3-4 times my daily caffeine consumption limit. It was a good time.
Jesus.
It was a good time. It was fun. It was fun. But
I'll take your word for it.
we're done with that. That's not the job we're supposed to be talking about today either. We're supposed to start things off talking about the fact that there is the Victory World Cup. Neither of us on our team, but we got to cast it this weekend, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. This is our first time together in a while, Sierra. I want to say, what was the last regional we cast together? Because
God, it's a while back.
Obviously, 2022 we did NAIC and Worlds together, and that was like the foundation of the friendship. And it was like, oh my god, you and Sierra are so good together. Like, I know, and they're like, you should make a podcast. I'm like, what? Okay, I guess we will. We're just too charismatic. We can't.
We're too good.
Can't deny the friendship anymore. Trying to think what regional would that have been? Oh yeah, because remember we talked about this too, because we had the "and they were roommates" line at some point last year with Cortex.
It's Portland.
No, but I hosted Portland, didn't I?
No, Dawes, I have a list of every regional last season and all the casters and the analysts that worked it, as well as every round streamed. A bunch of really, really nerdy notes, and I don't have what the pairings were, which huge oversight on my end. But Dawes was hosting, and I actually do vividly remember that because Ugarte won, and he was super emotional after, and he's like, "Can Sierra interview me?" We're like, "No, Dawes is interviewing you. That's how it is. I'll stand here for support, though." So I do vividly remember Dawes was
and that's like Cortex and his roommate were facing each other on stream, and we were like, oh. We like literally, Sierra and I were going back and forth for like 4 minutes, waiting for the other person to mention that the two players on stream were roommates, so that we could both make that they were roommates joke.
Yeah, it was the ultimate standoff. But the casters for the event was me, you, Rose, and Aaron's in. Like,
okay, gotcha.
I feel like Rose and Aaron is like the duo. So like, I don't imagine why they wouldn't have been together, which then means that we would have been the second duo.
I think that makes sense.
It does sound right that it was Portland. Like, there's kind of like a little buzzer going off in my head that
Portland
it was
Portland. Like May, so that means before last weekend with the World Cup, we hadn't cast together since May.
Yeah, frankly, yeah, because I was analyst for Hartford. I didn't go to Milwaukee. You and Scott were casting Fresno together because you were casting NAIC together because I was analyst for NAIC. And then you were me at Worlds and I was a scrub at Worlds. So, yeah, we haven't casted together.
It's been a while to say, yeah. But no, World Cup was a lot of fun. It's the Victory Road team does a great job. I think it's so cool seeing like 50 different countries come together and actually be respectful and schedule like with each other with time zones accordingly and stuff. And like there are like 8-man draft leagues that can't even get people to schedule their matches, and you got like a team from Singapore and a team from Ireland or whatever facing each other, and they actually can finish their matches. So I think it's great that people actually show some respect to Victory Road and to the World Cup format, because this is great practice for people to play against trainers that you would never have the chance to play against otherwise, but it's also a great visual and like community ran event as well.
I have to say too, because first off, for the participants, like, absolutely kudos. Sometimes there is activity wins. I will not say anything beyond that, either than I do know of one that happened like last week that people were talking about. It happens. There's life. But beyond the players, like everyone at Victory Road who specifically works on World Cup in the organization, I mean, every single week they have all of the pairings. They track who needs to be capturing their gameplay to have it broadcasted. They have backup matches. They're checking in on this. They're tracking all of it. Like, it's amazing. So the fact that we have this tournament in VGC that has this prestige that people take seriously, that obviously comes from the people that are running it behind the scenes. So that's a big golf clap to them.
Yeah, for sure. It's a Is this the third World Cup? Am I counting that wrong? Or that's the third one? Okay, cool. So
yeah, so it was super cool too that we got to cast, because I know you're in the Team Ireland Discord. I did
the
not make.
boys.
Yep, I did not make Team Canada. I'm crying, but we got to cast, which was nice too, because obviously we'll be casting LASC together, and like you said, we haven't casted together since May. So being able to actually cast for Victory Road and cast actual real live matches that count for something, as opposed to just recording some casting over some VODs where it doesn't really count, it was really nice. And it was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, we gotta rebuild that synergies there. You know, we gotta finish each other's sandwiches. We gotta be able to, pick up. I'm picking up what you're putting down, and it's a lot easier in person, right? That's another aspect of online commentaries. Like, I can't nudge you to say oh, look at this move on the team sheet or something to move to the next talking point. You can't do that online. You don't know if someone's just taking a breath or if someone's tossing it to change to you, right? So in person, it's a lot easier to do, but any amount of practice is good practice, especially when you're practicing against great players from all over the world. And I think in our 2 matches we had on last Sunday, one of them was the Paul Chua Roaring Moon team, which apparently was 3 or 4 times on the broadcast on Sunday.
A lot.
A lot of people are just using Chua's team. But I'm sure it's good to get practice with team compositions like that, because we're going to see a lot of that in LASC. And then the other match we had was an Ursaluna Blood Moon mirror, but with different trick room setters. So it's good to get crazy off the wall stuff too, so you can be prepared for those different strategies.
I just have to say, going back a little bit, I'm surprised that when you're talking about casting in person, because you're you can't see if I point something out. But we both know that the most annoying thing that, when we're casting in person, is whenever I want to talk, because traditionally I've been the play-by-play, but I'll see some analysis that I want to say, and I start tapping the table. I need to talk.
I can't stand it. It's just right in my face, and I'm I don't see her. I'm right here, but you're I need to talk about this Flutter Mane right now.
Can't help it.
I will die if I don't point out this booster energy Icy Wind.
That is how it feels. Is there's something happening during the turn and you're talking, and then it's I need to say something right, and I'm at least you can respect that I don't cut you off.
Yeah.
I'm just tapping the table super annoying so that you'll hopefully finally give me the point so I can say what I want to say.
There's a difference because you're excited to say something instead of you're trying to get me to stop talking, right? Those are two different scenarios.
Yeah, I'm just excited. I'm just I see the thing I want to talk about. And yeah, and it makes you feel better. I do that with whoever I'm casting with. They don't always actually hand me the point after like you do. You'll actually Sierra actually wants to interject something here. I'll let her. And then I think too, yeah, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm pretty good at if I cut you off to say something, I do my little tappy thing. I keep it normally brief and I do hand it back.
Yeah, and
I have to say this one thing.
We do have a good hybrid nature to our cast, and I think that's why a lot of people liked it at first at NASC and Worlds, because we were both play by traditional sense, but we flexed around on technically in those roles. I was being the color, but obviously we had some flex commentary back and forth, and I think that's nice to be conversational like that. And we're still playing to our strengths, even if we're assigned in different roles there. So I think we're kind of doing the best of both worlds when we approach casting like that.
Yeah, 100%. And it was fun for Victory Road because we actually swapped roles. So anyone who listened that was this sounds a little bit odd, you got to play by play, so you got to step into your more traditional role, and I picked up the color commentary, and that's hard. That's just hard, man.
Spoiler alert! Yeah, it's
what?
So yeah,
warned me.
Yeah, Troy Aikman makes it look so easy on Monday Night Football, but no, being the color analyst is actually very difficult because play-by-play, I don't want to say play-by-play is easy by any stretch, because I actually think, I think on a base level, I think play-by-play, you can just get the job done by reading what's on the screen, right? And that's why people say at a base level, play-by-play is easier. But I think at a higher level, the play-by-play, if you can be good at play-by-play, it's more impactful than being the better at color. It's just my biased perspective. But I think color commentary really gets not disregarded, but like people really don't appreciate how much it goes into it, because it's not just like, I think he's going to click fake out trick room. It's like, he should click fake, like he could click out fake out trick room, because that sets him up for later on in the game for, you know, turns from now, blah, blah, blah. So like, there's a lot more, because you shouldn't just go in, like anyone listening who wants to get into color, like you think, oh, I'm good enough for the game, I want to try it. You should not go into the turn trying to be Nostradamus and saying he's going to click this and then this and then this is going to happen, this is going to happen. That's not your job. Your job is to color or add onto the painting that the play-by-play is presenting, is showing to the audience. So if the play-by-play says, oh, and the Fluttermane critical hit Moonblast knocks out Iron Hands, your job is to not say, well, he's going to bring Rillaboom in now because he has a free switch. Your job is to say, now that he's down a Pokemon, he's in a really bad spot because that Iron Hands could have responded with a Heavy Slam if it wasn't for the critical hit. Because you're supposed to tell the audience why that critical hit was important, not trying to show that you're so smart. So I think that's one of the toughest parts. And I definitely still struggle. There's a lot I can improve on color commentary. Like, I'm definitely not a finished product in any sense, and it's very difficult.
I feel like a really easy way to describe it, and for people to maybe understand and break down, is it's not just analyzing the game, it's like kind of building up a story, but in an analytical sense. So I was specifically talking to Ugarte because he listened to the match. I have never color casted before for any game. Like, full-time casting and hosting is my job. I've never color casted before in my life. And I really actually like talking about the analytical aspects of the game, hence why even as a color caster, I'm always like, I gotta say something here. Because I actually really like diving into that stuff. But once I was actually in that color caster role, it was really difficult to kind of paint the picture or get people invested into why it was happening. So one of our matches, actually that Blood Moon Ursaluna mirror that we had, it was actually quite interesting because when we were looking at the teams, obviously the two teams were quite different in how they were built for Trick Room. Sanders' team from the Netherlands was a little bit more Trick Room based, whereas Ashton Cox had kind of like a Trick Room mode, had a faster Tailwind mode, and could kind of play either or, which then led to mid-game some pretty interesting mind games because realistically, Ashton fared a little bit better outside of Trick Room on a basis.
Right, because his Ursaluna happened to be naturally faster than both his opponent's Ursaluna and his opponent's Iron Hands. So if it's a Trick Room mirror, Iron Hands, a fighting type, into the normal type Ursaluna, that kind of made it a worse matchup for Ashton, which I think you did a good job of explaining to people, like, because of these speed tiers, it's actually disadvantageous for this Trick Room team to be in Trick Room in this specific matchup.
But where I failed was like in the more mid-game, specifically looking at like the game 1 and game 2. Game 2 specifically, because it was Sander that was playing more so for the Trick Room and Ashton that had to wait it out. Ashton in game 3 actually went for the Trick Room mode, and then Sander got to take advantage. But in like game 2, there was opportunities for Ashton to reverse Trick Room, but I didn't really touch on, I more so was talking about the past analytics as opposed to the future moves that could be made and kind of setting up the story. Because Ashton had opportunities to reverse Trick Room, and it could have been like, all right, now we're getting the Pokemon in an advantageous position to maybe try and reset this Trick Room. All these Pokemon are faster, and kind of dive on that path, explaining why maybe that as opposed to, hey, taking a KO here or waiting it out could have been advantageous. But a lot of my analyst was kind of why something happens, as opposed to painting the story to then help you when you're play-by-play to kind of expand off of it. If I go on to, all right, well, now we have a perfectly positioned Farigiraf here. We could look at this Trick Room, try and reverse it, and then have you have a pivot point. So that was kind of something that was really lacking that I kind of disrespected a little bit in terms of how difficult that would be, because like that's hard to do in the moment. Like, you can look back and recognize that, but in the moment, that is hard.
Well, all things considered, as you like to say.
Oh no, my worst crutch phrase! My worst crutch phrase! No!
I think you only said it once, to my memory. I did note that you did say it once in the cast, and I giggled to myself. But all things considered, I think it is definitely a difficult balance of the past and the future, because, like I said, your job is not to be Nostradamus and tell us what's going to happen. So, yes, it is important to state like where the board is and what that can lead to and the positions that the two players can go for. But if you watch traditional sports, I don't know how often you watch, football, hockey, baseball, whatever. Right. I think even if you don't like the sports, it can still be valuable just watching and listening from a pure technical level, trying to understand the just the broadcast and how the play-by-play and color interact. Like, even if you don't care about the two hockey teams playing, just listen to the guys going back and forth, and you can learn a lot from it. Because if you watch football, a lot of football color analysts, like I said, Troy Aikman on Monday Night Football or whoever, they're not sitting there saying like, okay, well, because they ran for 5 yards the previous turn, now on 2nd and 5 they're going to throw a pass, because that's not their job. They're not supposed to predict what the next play is going to be. They're telling you, oh, because the left tackle had such a strong push on the defensive line that opened a hole for the running back to run through and get a big run through it. So it is it's a delicate balance of like, this thing worked out successfully in the past and here is why. And then they can also say, because the team has gotten so many yards through the run game, that opens up the potential for the pass game with play action passes and tricking the defense into it. And then that's how they can talk about the future plays. So I wouldn't like beat yourself up.
Oh, you're good. Yeah. You're good.
Hold on, I got a cough.
He's coughing, guys. He's coughing. For those Spotify listeners.
Yeah. I wouldn't beat yourself up too much about like focusing on the past too much. You'll get there.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like too, when you're describing what they do in football, I feel like for myself when I'm listening to a color caster, like, because Pokemon's a little bit different than football in terms of like how the things are laid out. Obviously, I feel like that is the most like duh phrase of the century. But I feel like a good color cast in a turn of when they're talking in between those turns, because normally it goes from after all the action is done, then the color commentator will start talk until the action starts back up. I feel like a good mix of touching on the last turn, like what actually happened, talking about where the board state is now because of what had happened, and then talking about where things could go based off of where the board state is now. So then talking about like in the trick room example, like, oh, he didn't set trick room. Why was that a thing? Where is the board state now because he didn't reset the trick room? What can be done on the next turn? And then we'll see the action play out. That's where the play-by-play talks. And then the color goes back. And then they can kind of touch on their past thing, where like they kind of left off with what maybe could have happened in comparison to what did happen. And then reevaluate and kind of rinse and repeat. And I didn't do the end part of that very well, because that I think is really, really difficult to do.
Yeah, but like I do think it could be good for you to watch, because you say like football is not that much like Pokemon. However, football, the average play in football, I think is like 7 seconds long or something like that, and it's a 40-second play clock, meaning there's essentially 34 seconds between plays, which you could argue is very similar to how Pokemon broadcasts are done, right? You have the play-by-play go through the move, and then you have 45 seconds before the players have to lock in their move. So I remember when I was in college, I did my school's like college radio and college sports and broadcasting and everything. We had a broadcasting class where the college students, we were the camera and the crew and the directors and TDs and everything for our Saturday football games for the school, right? And one of the best notes my professor gave me was to watch a college football game, like on ESPN or something. Don't care about the score, don't care about anything. Just watch how the announcers are talking, what they're talking about, and how the director is changing cameras. So it'd be, here's the wide shot for the play. Okay, run for 3 yards. Here's the ISO on the running back that just ran. And it's like, take notes every time they cut. of like what they cut to. And then they're like, okay, here's the long throw, 40-yard pass. Wide receiver catches it, goes out of bounds. Here's the ISO on the wide receiver. Right. So you start to pick up that pattern. You understand, and you can say, okay, the announcer talked about the play, the play-by-play guy talked about the play and the 40-yard catch, and the color commentator talked about how the wide receiver got open on that play. So even, for anyone else at home that wants to get into commentary, even for you specifically, I use the hockey analogy because you're Canadian, but I'm sure they have football in Canada that you can listen to too.
It's bad though.
You can you can actually learn a lot from traditional sports just watching it, and you don't care about the outcome. You're not rooting for a team. You're listening to the broadcast and listening to how the announcers are actually using their words to tell a story.
I do think that, first off, I hate football. I'm sure that's going to get me in hot water with a couple of people out there. I just think it's boring. The whole, hey, do something for 7 seconds and then 35 seconds, 40 seconds talking before they do their never second. I hate it. I grew up with hockey. I grew up with soccer. I just, it's not for me. But I do think that it actually is really, really valuable when you're looking at traditional sports, because obviously when you're looking at sports, what they have to go through to be getting to that level of commentary, I feel like esports is super, super blessed and pretty easy in comparison to get into, to where maybe for the longer standing esports, things are a little bit more fleshed out. But if you're looking at something newer, it's not really going to compare to sports, to how long they've had it and how competitive it is to actually get into a proper cast for that. So I definitely do think it is valuable to look into. It's also one of those things, too, for anyone out there who's like, I know Pokemon, I want to get into commentary. The biggest thing that I noticed with really smart people coming into Pokemon commentary is their lack of ability to tell a story sometimes, and just they spew everything analytical, and it's like, totally understand that you know about the game, but they could really, really profit of the actually looking to sports, so on the storytelling aspect, because I feel like that's the biggest hindrance, is people don't quite understand the broadcast aspect of things sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Like how we mentioned with our Ursaluna mirror match, we talked about, this is a mirror, but not the same. So it's already an interesting story, right? They both have Ursaluna, however, one has Dusclops and one has Farigiraf as the Trick Room Setter, which are operating very different roles. And we see through the storyline of the match that it's actually bad for Trick Room to go up in Ashton's sense, because he now Iron Hands and Ursaluna on the other side under speed. And then that story pays off in game 3 when Ashton sets his own Trick Room and it works out for Sander in the end. So that's something that we've trained and honed on, that skill of the storytelling of we set up, this is an interesting matchup, this is what can happen, and here is the result. We went through the story. I think we did a great job.
I still I felt bad when we were casting VR, because I'm so used to casting play-by-play. Even at my day job, if I'm not hosting, I am only a play-by-play caster. Even other games, whether it's Valorant, Apex, whatever, it's only play-by-play. And then I kept noticing that I kept just talking play-by-play because I'm so used to it. The turn would happen and I start talking through it. I'm like, no, shoot, stop that. Don't do that. Don't do that. But even if play-by-play is the more regarded, easier role, I feel too, when you're looking at something like Pokemon, to be a good play-by-play, it actually has to be so much more. I feel it's sometimes regarded too as the play-by-play is the dumb person and the color caster is the smart person, when realistically both people should have the exact same game knowledge. It's just a difference in how they're describing what's happening.
Yeah, and esports is the only I don't know, industry in the world where the play-by-play caster is expected to be as knowledgeable and as good at the game as the color caster, because nobody asked Al Michaels, who's the legendary NFL and NBA, he's one of the most legendary American sports broadcasters of all time. Nobody asked him how many 3-pointers he can make before he got his job casting NBA. Nobody asked him to be on the ice to play. How fast can you run on skates before he cast the Miracle on Ice game in in the Olympics? it's a thing that is so weird for me coming from my traditional sports background, because I try to get into other esports and I try to apply and send my reel and my resume into connections, and they're like, oh, well, what's your rank? And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? And it's like, oh, you have to be grandmaster to apply to cast for this. And I'm like, but I'm applying for play-by-play. Like, I should be allowed to be gold and play it, because I am telling the story of the match, and I have to be smart enough to know how the game works, right? And be able to present that information to the audience. But I don't, esports has that weird requirement. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because, like, with games that are, like, a lot more, when you're looking at Pokemon, it's like, I don't think you need to have results to, like, prove that you know your stuff. But where that really, really gets me too is, like, esports, where it's like, you need to have, like, a mechanical skill of, like, mouse and keyboard and shooting and stuff. Like, people will use, like, in, like, Valorant, like, oh, what rank are you? Or, like, League of Legends. I know you cast that too. Oh, what rank are you? And it's like, my knowledge isn't on basis with how fast I can click or, like, my mechanical knowledge. I can know everything about this game and then just be absolutely stupid with how to work my hands on a mouse and keyboard. And that doesn't change the knowledge I have about the game, even if it means that I'll never be able to get a good achievement, a good rank in this.
Right, yeah, I completely agree. I think it's one of the most frustrating aspects of esports, because it's not even just from the company's perspective, because a lot of times this is also brought on by the audience too, and the community. Whenever we would have new casters come in, even in Pokemon, I'm not gonna act like our own community isn't susceptible to this behavior of, like, oh, this person's never won a regional, or they've never done anything, like, why are they casting? And it's like, it's not the requirement from TBCI's end is, like, you have to have won X amount of regionals to be on the broadcast. Like, they understand we bring value and bring storytelling and bring entertaining broadcasts to the audience, regardless of how many championships we've won.
It's funny seeing the community perspective sometimes. I haven't seen it much nowadays. But
it used to be a lot worse. It's much better now. It used to be a lot worse.
But, like, I joined the commentary team very early in my VGC career. Like, I did a VGC draft league and didn't know how to play the game and got brought onto it. But then, despite the fact that I don't think I did good in my Players Cup cast whatsoever, and I don't think I showed any knowledge of the game. But then there were still people commenting on things saying that I was one of the better VGC players of the casters. And, like, I still, like, there is, like, somehow there is this perspective from the matches that I won in the WBE, or, like, what I had accomplished, that I was accomplished enough to be on this casting roster, which then was not actually, it wasn't related to my casting, because if you listen to my casting, especially my Players Cup 3 one, because that was horrendous, it sounded like I didn't know a thing about the game.
Well, to give you some credit to merit on your end, you at least did play TCG at a high level, so you at least were a competitive gamer, right? You had some experience there, and I think it wasn't as much of, like, people praising you as them also hating on the other casters, and that's what I was talking about. It was worse back in the day. Like, it wasn't that you were great, it was just those commenters who are those random people that nobody ever knows, that comments on YouTube videos, like, that those people adamantly despised a major portion of the commentary crew. So it wasn't that you were great, it's just they hated everybody else and you were new.
There was one comment, I forget what it was, but somebody had messed up on something, and they're like, oh yeah, because they don't play the game, like, and know what they're talking about, like Lee and Sierra. I'm like, what?
You guys the same breath as Lee?
Right? What did I do in this game to be in the same breath as Lee? He top-8 the world championship. Right? But somehow, something I did, they were like, she knows what she's talking about. And it obviously wasn't from my casting. But they were like, she knows what she's talking about. It's so funny, too,
because they could have just taken the easy road out with Lou, who's been Lee's commentary partner forever. And you just said, with Lee and Lou, but it's like with Lee and Sierra. Like,
Sierra knows that Sierra's got...
I think I think that draft league win over Wolf gave you a lot of leverage.
I know, that's exactly what I think it was. I beat Wolf like one time in a draft league when my Hustle Dracozolt did not miss a single move, and people are like, oh, she's good.
Yeah.
She's real good.
She balls. She knows.
Yeah, she got absolutely bodied by Aaron the next round to the point where it was embarrassing, but it doesn't matter because she beat Wolf like once. Amazing. We take those.
Yeah.
Take those. But where were we even? VR, cool. Was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I don't know. I always feel bad when you go into the Sunday and it's like, oh, the other team's up 5-0 right now, so we're here for the fun of it, and it's still a fun match to cast, but it's like if you already know the outcome of it, it's a little disheartening.
Especially like, what story do you tell then? We're just looking to have a good time, folks.
Right. Exactly.
But, yeah, it's not as good. But hey, someone wants to win their week in VR or get to Master Ball #1 rank. We got a team for you. I got a suggestion. That is not legally binding, by the way. So do not take any seriousness in that. But we have finally released our OHKO team. So here to dive into a little bit more depth on what that is.
Yeah, so this is the first OHKO podcast community created team for VGC. So what we went into our Discord and we talked with our friends in there. If you want to join our Discord, we have that link in the description. We have a team building conversation, then we have a OHKO team channel as well. And we want to do, I don't know if it's going to be once a month or once a regulation or whatever system, whenever we feel like
finally all agree on something, because apparently that's we have a lot of ideas.
Yeah. So when we agree as a group on a Pokemon, we want to build a team around a specific Pokemon, a specific idea from scratch. And it's not like, oh, let's make Landorus or Shifu work. Like, no, we're not doing that. Like, we try to use fun Pokemon to get people experienced in a team building environment with friends and things. And you could take this if you've never played it. We have a lot of listeners, Sierra, that have never played at PCs. They're like, I've been following the game since, for years, but I've never went to an event. You can use this rental code and get practice and actually start feeling more confident and comfortable in going to live events and playing with it. So our first one of fingers crossed of hopefully many is a Pheasantipity status of, let's say, status. I don't know. How do you even want to describe this team? Like, what would you
amazing.
No, but like, what would you call the concept to somebody like, oh, what's your team built around?
Pheasantipity, poison stuff. Yeah, okay. I think that's I was
gonna say like Pheasantipity status advantage or something, because it's not the only Pokemon that can actually status things on the team. So the core is from our friend Pheasantipity, who we know the Loyal 3 not that great at VGC, so we wanted to build one around it. The core, we even mentioned on the episode before, is that you have the Toxic Chain, you have spread attacks that both have the chance to activate the Toxic Poison on the enemy side, and then you have Choice Specs Hex Fluttermane that does double damage if the Pokemon is statused, and so you can actually just obliterate some Pokemon. When I was playing with this game, if they are poisoned and you click that Choice Specs Hex into them, it can be pretty cool. So we're gonna have a team rental and everything. Hopefully we can tweet that out for that, so anyone who wants to use it, we'll have it in the Discord as well. You can go on Battle Stadium, but those are not the only two Pokemon. The other ways to ensure the damage over time effect of it is we also have Magma Storm Heatran, which I feel like we lead Heatran and Pheasantipity a lot next to each other. So they get poisoned, and then Magma Storm forces them to stay in and start tacking on those that toxic damage. We also have Ogerpon Wellspring with Follow Me as another redirection option to keep your Fluttermane safe. Sinistcha as our grass type that has access to both Trick Room and Rage Powder. So two redirectors, because Fluttermane really is most of your damage. on this team. And then Matcha Gacha also has the chance to burn, right? Just another status condition we can go for. And then you have to have Iron Hands because, of course, why not use the Pokemon that is on half of the Pokemon or half of the teams in the format? Gives you Fake Out, gives you so many other great options. So those are our 6 Pokemon. They're not too off the wall. The crazy things are really the Hex Fluttermane and the Choice Scarf Pheasantipity trying to poison things, but it's tested, Sierra. We played it, we built it together, we ran the EV spreads for different things. This is a team that you might not win. You might not win a regional with this, but you could probably top 8 a PC. You could maybe top 4 a PC with this team.
You can at least hit Master Ball rank with this team.
For sure.
That's for sure. But no, this was really, really fun to make, especially too, since it was a team that was built in the Discord with help from the community. Like, it was a bunch of ideas coming together. And some people really, really went the distance, like playing multiple games with the team when it was on different points of its development to kind of pinpoint weaknesses. And then, of course, with the OHKO team as well, it is meant to be kind of a little silly goofy. It's like, realistically, could you make a Fluttermane, Heatran, Iron Hands, Ogerpon, a Sinisha team that's good and then just put something else for Pheasantipity? Yes, there's probably better stuff out there, but it is meant to be kind of a little soupy. We're kind of having fun with it, right? So this was a core idea that we wanted to try for a while with the Toxic Chain and the Choice Pack. So I'm excited. If it was up to me, we would have 3 more different ways to do status moves, as well as 3 individual Pokemons that get all do Hex, but like it's fine.
You'll get over it eventually.
I'll get over it
because we didn't want to be too indexed into just the poison thing. Because the more I played a lot with this team and throughout multiple different stages. At one point, we had a Gothitelle on the team that Sierra absolutely despised, and we had Ogerpon Teal Mask at first as our grass type with Follow Me, and then that got turned into Rage Powder Sinistra. So, like, even if you're not great at team building, you can see how the conversation evolves with a friend group of how Gothitelle got turned into Iron Hands because we went from one Fake Out to another, and Ogerpon got turned into Sinistra because you went from Follow Me to Rage Powder, right? And then that left our Ogerpon Wellspring because we wanted a water type and we didn't want our Shifu in that spot. So you can see how an evolution of a team building process works. And we hope that is helpful for our newer or beginner level VGC players that listen to the podcast, because we do think there are some good insight in there.
It was fun too that everyone got to contribute to the team together, and because we already had the starting point. Hey, we want to use Pheasantipity with Toxic Chain, and we want to use Hex Fluttermane, and then kind of seeing where ideas went from there. Because I feel like too, being able to team build in a group environment and bounce ideas off of each other, even if everything wasn't used. For example, Gothitelle, it's still really, really valuable to be able to hear other people's perspective on stuff. And we do have a regular team building channel as well, which some people did take the ideas that they liked from the OHKO team that weren't end up being used, and then taking it to the team building channel like, hey, I actually kind of want to do this. So it was fun all around. But yes, that is put up as a rental. If you have not checked out Twitter, to grab that up for yourself, make sure that you do. We got to figure out what we're doing for our next team now.
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing, because now that we're done with Pheasantipity, we're not just, one and done, okay, now we never make a team with our community again. We'd like to, as you said, maybe once a month or maybe a little bit more, longer than a month and a half, whatever, work on a team, and we're going to need everybody's help. So if you want to get your vote, if you want your voices to be heard, you have to join the Discord, because we are going to have a poll. I don't think you can make the poll in Discord. I think we'll have to make it outside of it and then post it in there, Sierra. But we have 4 new Pokemon that we can build around, and only one of them can win.
Only one of them can win, and they're definitely not all... I was going to say good enough, but that sounds mean. Not all...
big meta threats. We're intentionally trying. We're not trying to build around a Urshifu Rillaboom Heatran team. That's not the point of what we're trying to do with these teams. We're trying to have fun with underrepresented Pokemon. How about that? Yeah,
we're not necessarily trying to build bad teams, but we're trying to have more fun, more creative team building, get those creative juices flowing, have fun with the game, because ultimately, at the end of the day, that is the most important part. So, the vote is going to be Little drum roll there. Boo. Between Politoed, Empoleon, Ogerpon, Cornerstone version, which I have a personal vendetta against, and Hisuian Typhlosion. So I think almost all great options.
Yeah, and even if you look on Pikalytics, the highest usage is Ogerpon Cornerstone at 5%. Empoleon's 2% usage, Politoed's 1% usage, Hisuian Typhlosion is 0.27% usage last time I looked. And we have reasons for all these. One, Politoed's a big fan favorite in the Discord. A lot of members of the community are really big Politoed fans. Empoleon, one of our biggest social clips, was a heated conversation on if Empoleon or Milotic were better. We got a lot of comments on Instagram about that one. And then Ogerpon Cornerstone, because Sierra got absolutely demolished, got mollywopped by one at a PC, and it was fun to force Sierra into that terror of building against a team that Pokemon destroyed her. And then Hisuian Typhlosion, you said that raid is going on right now, so it's timely and relevant if people want to build around it.
I feel like the Cornerstone Ogerpon, that's a tongue twister for no reason, is almost a little too good to be building against, which is funny because that's not something I would have said a few weeks ago. But make sure to get the votes in so your voices can be heard. I really am hoping for Politoed. I feel like that'd be fun.
I think it's going to be Politoed or Empoleon. I think one of those two are going to win. But hey, prove it to all you Ogerpon Cornerstone truthers out there. Prove us wrong. Vote for it.
Prove us wrong. But hey, up next, because we did say that we're going to be having a special guest up on the podcast, someone who is definitely good enough at Pokemon that they know a thing or two. So next up, we're going to be bringing on Toronto Regional Champion Cross. All right, and we have Chuppa on the line. Chuppa, thank you so much for joining us. We are honored. How are you doing this fine weekday evening?
Hey, just on a bike ride earlier today, and nicer than usual New York weather, and very happy to be joining you guys this evening.
A bike ride? I know it's not freezing out, but like, how long can you go in the weather like this? Like before your face starts to hurt.
Oh, Joe, it was like 60 degrees today. Really, there was no face hurting.
Oh, I didn't know it got that high. I don't know. I was a little cold today.
What is that for the Canadians out there? 60 Fahrenheit to Celsius.
Who even knows?
Celsius is fake.
15 Celsius? That's insane. It's so cold here already. I literally
15.
Coming back from errands, I'm shivering. There's like ice rain outside. It's not fair.
15 means nothing because like there's so many numbers between 15 and 16 that it's almost like it doesn't even make sense that 15 and 16 are so drastically different. Like,
well, it's 15.5.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected. Okay, I understand.
Yeah, that exists. That exists. But no, glad that you're able to take time away from your beautiful New York weather for November and talk to us. Especially too, you did get to come to Canada recently, and you got to go home with a little bit more than a lot of people get to, which was a regional championship title. Super, super exciting stuff. I have to know, like, right out of the gate, just, like, your first thoughts, your first reactions after winning. Just rip that Band-Aid off, because, like, the look on your face was utter disbelief, frankly.
Yeah, I did not go into this regional with grand expectations. I went in with a team that, I felt was strong, but that I wasn't sure if I was quite experienced enough with. And when you're using a standard team, there's always this thought, like, what if I'm just going to run into the people who have good counter teams for it? It's not like this is the first time you fought Tornadus Urshifu before. So kind of just walking out of there with the win, especially like the 2-0 victory in finals, I was kind of just shocked. It's like, oh wow, I guess this was finally the time that it was going to happen.
Right, and it was Paul Chua, one of your, good VGC friends from the past decade in the New York, New Jersey area. So obviously it's not the first time. You guys have probably played each other like 30 times at this point, counting PCs and regionals and things like that. So going into a matchup where you are so familiar with your opponent's play style, and he's a notoriously analytical player that's just like, he takes forever to make decisions, right? And he always feels like he's trying to make that optimal turn. every turn. How do you go into that matchup knowing you have so much experience against this specific player?
Yeah, against somebody like Paul, is kind of a matter of like figuring out which of my own strategies are going to be really reliable. Because Paul's not somebody that's like, not only does he not have a team that's relying on making hard reads, he's not a player that's really going to try and do that either. I guess like the fake out into the flutter vein is kind of like counter to what I'm saying, but in general, Paul's somebody who's just like a lot of top players really looking for his reliable plays, and that's something that I can deal with, because if you just try to make reliable plays over and over again, Pokemon like Tornadus, Fluttermane, Urshifu, they can find ways to just outdamage you. So I guess in some ways that ended up working in my favor.
And then you said too, coming into this event, that winning, taking it down more than you bargained for, because especially looking at the team, it's standard. It's a really, really good team. So then what's kind of the mentality that you go into events with, just kind of across the board? Because obviously you've been playing this game for a while, very accomplished player, even if you have been chasing down the first place title for a while. Is it always just what team's going to be consistently getting me to a good result type vibe, or?
Yeah, no, that's actually a great question. So even if I'm somebody who there's not many events that I really go into like necessarily expecting to win. I don't want to get ahead of myself and set, unreasonable goals that I'm not going to be able to meet and then feel disappointed with myself. But I am very deliberately looking for teams that I think have a chance to get to the top. And, part of how I narrowed out maybe teams that I didn't want to use was teams that I thought were only going to get me something like a 10-4 finish. I've got enough 10-4 finishes. I don't need to get that record again. I want to find a team that I think has the potential to take me even higher, with the right matchup spread or with the right play really could take me to, let's say, something like top 8, where at that point it's really just going to be tough for any team to move on from that point without really amazing play. And I think that's part of why I decided on the team that I did, because I didn't really find that it had especially many bad matchups. And if I was really on top of my game, I would be able to take on most of the other people in the venue.
So let's actually talk about that team, Chuppa, because as we're looking at it, it's Rillaboom, Suian Arcanine, Urshifu Rapid Strike, Tornadus, Fluttermane, and then Chien-Pao. And I think for as long as I've known you as a player, you're definitely comfortable taking, I don't mean generic in a negative sense, but like general teams, right? Safe teams. You're not, obviously you had the Palmot in San Diego, which was awesome, but like you're not out here running Jamie Boyd style teams at regionals.
I was going to say
right? So like you are definitely using comfortable, reliable Pokemon, and these 6 Pokemon, they definitely scream reliable here. So I know you spoke with Simone, but like, what's the chicken or the egg situation? Were you helping him and then he won and then you used it, or did he win and you messaged him and he let you use the team?
No, Simone's, I was going to say he's the chicken and I'm the egg, but then it's like, of course we don't know which of them comes first. Whichever one came first, that's Simone. Like, he was working on the team on his own, did a really great job, like, getting ready for his regional win with it. I don't think I had better advice for him than like use the team that you're comfortable with instead of something that you're not comfortable with, which is advice that I'd give to almost anybody. And after seeing him win with it, it was just like kind of an affirmation that even this like regulation D team with slightly updated sets can still work really well in the metagame. There's a reason that this team has been seeing results like practically since it was built like 3 months ago in the middle of regulation D.
If we're talking about Sanvi, I have to ask too, because obviously once you started going on a run in Toronto, people started posting on Twitter. I think the most notorious ones coming out from trailer, like if you close your eyes and it's Sanvi and then morphing into you. What do you think of all this? I have to know your thoughts about these memes.
No, so it's really funny. Like, I think the first time people were telling me, like, hey, Chuppa, there's a European guy that looks like you, is like maybe the spring of 2016. And just like, oh, I mean, that's kind of funny, but I don't know this guy, just kind of a novelty. And then over the summer, it turned out like, oh, not only do we look similar, but we also play kind of similar teams, and we developed a friendship around like both using primals. Sanvi was able to like qualify through day 1 of Worlds the first time he was playing in it. I was not, so maybe he was the better of the two for a little bit. But yeah, since then I've just been pretty good friends with him, done a lot of like collaborative team building, like let's say for his like London winning team in 2017, that was Something that I had a little bit of input on, but ultimately just a team that we both really enjoyed using. And then, even at the start of 2018 with teams like Metafini, Sanfi's just been a really great friend of mine for a long time. And it's kind of funny how looking a little bit similar was the basis for part of that.
Yeah, it's like we have a lot in common, we like Pokemon, we like this, we look alike, so it just starts to add up. Oh yeah, I'm just looking at your 6 here that you both use, and as you mentioned, it is a Regulation D eligible team, right? So there's no Ogrepons, there's no Sinistras, there's no no Komos or anything. So is that something that you are conscious of when you are looking at a team? Is like, am I taking advantage of everything that is available to me right now? Like, remember James Beck using most of 2019 not having a Mega on his team, even though Mega Evolution was legal in the format. So you come into this Regulation E event, does it concern you that you don't have any of those Regulation E eligible Pokemon, or are you just so comfortable with this team that it doesn't matter?
I honestly kind of forgotten about the fact that I wasn't using any of the new Regulation E Pokemon, just because, I think the new Pokemon that were added in this format are some of, I want to say some of the weakest that they've been before. I'm not sure if that's entirely accurate, because, Ogerpon's great, but after Ogerpon, a lot of the new Pokemon can be strong, but they're a little more niche. Think stuff like Ursaluna Blood Moon, which is powerful, but it's really only on a specific archetype. You're not just putting Ursaluna Blood Moon on any archetype. Maybe it's kind of like with the Treasures of Ruin when those came out. They're all pretty strong Pokemon, but you also you probably want to have a kind of good reason to be adding them. It's not like Regulation D where it's just kind of a huge add to the power level, or with the Paradox Pokemon. It really just was not something that I was thinking about too much. And then it's like, oh, I guess this was a Regulation D team after all. Cool.
I'd love to know then the thoughts about kind of Regulation D, what was standard in comparison to where we see with Regulation E, because it kind of seemed like that shiny new toy syndrome for a little bit, with Ogerpon coming in and stuff. People kind of maybe replacing their Urshifus with this Water Ogerpon, or maybe dropping a Rillaboom, but everything's kind of gone back. Do you think that Ogerpon's just kind of that underwhelming, all things considered, or is it just kind of a direction that people like to have their team building go in?
No, I definitely wouldn't say Ogerpon's underwhelming or anything, but I think this event was really the Urshifu strikes back. Its usage had been pretty low at some of the previous events, but we still saw it putting up good results at stuff like Peoria, where it was on both of the finalist teams. I remember at the time I was really surprised by this, because I still kind of expected Ogerpon to be taking over then, especially the Water Mask. But I think by Toronto it had become clear oh, maybe people were sleeping on Urshifu, and this Pokemon is still really the demon that it was in Regulation D, absolutely format defining Pokemon then. And I think it's still going to keep carving out that name for itself, just because it really does have so many traits going for it that are just kind of borderline rule breaking in a way that the Ogerpon forms just don't. They're strong, but they don't ignore protect. They only crit an eighth of the time and not 100% of the time, 3 times a turn. Urshifu's kind of silly.
It's a little silly. It's a little silly, goofy.
I think that's the one thing we've learned over the last couple of months of VGC is it's a silly little Pokemon Urshifu has there. But another Pokemon you have on your team here that we have raved a lot about is Hisuian Arcanine. And I'm not gonna lie and say I was there from the beginning, because I wasn't, because I still thought regular Arcanine was better at the beginning. And I was I don't like this fire rock typing. Half the format has Urshifu.
Change.
Yeah, half the teams have Urshifu on them. I don't really like. The other half have Landorus, right? So I don't like this fire rock typing and all this stuff. So Hisuian Arcanine has won 4 straight major events in the North America and Europe. So how strong do you think Hisuian Arcanine is in general, just in the metagame, and compared to its Cantonian predecessor?
So I originally felt kind of the same way about it. When everybody was making tier lists of these new Pokemon, now that we knew we were going to get them in Regulation D, but we weren't playing it yet, or maybe, some people even had started playing it. And I was just thinking why would I want a rock type on my Arcanine? I kind of just want to click Will-O-Wisp. Why is a rock type why do I need to click Rock Slide? I just want to click Flare Blitz, Extreme Speed, Will-O-Wisp, and like go about my day. And only as time went on, it became apparent like how strong that choice band set is, or on top of that, how strong Rock Slide is, and how Arcanine can kind of like fight against what really is one of the worst defensive typings in the game to make all these like other
Yeah.
amazing attributes about itself work. And I've kind of like gone through that process myself, where like at Pittsburgh, I was trying to use it where my only speed control was Iron Bundle with Icy Wind, and figuring out like, oh, Arcanine still feels really poor into stuff like Urshifu or Landorus, and realizing that Tailwind is just really that stronger speed control that it needs to work. And I think that's kind of like the deciding factor in Arcanine going from like pretty poor Pokemon to like really one of the best in the format. Unfortunately, like I just don't know where Cantoni and Arcanine would fit in this format. Even if I love it, it's just like you gotta commit to the Rock Dog.
The Rock Dog. Yeah, it's really interesting with how Regulation E has kind of shifted which Pokemon are on the top, despite the fact that none of those Pokemon that are in the top are those Regulation E Pokemon. Like, we get to see Hizui and Arcanine just popping off. I mean, at this point, it's 4 regionals in a row that it's won. But even then, looking over through Toronto, like Fluttermane's all the way down to 38% for day 2 usage. We're getting that Water Urshifu at that top spot. I don't know. It's really, really interesting to see kind of where people's minds have been going into this new regulation so far. I'm kind of a fan, honestly. I feel like where we are right now, this feels really stable and kind of fun.
I honestly don't know if I'd say it's too stable. Like, I think one of the fascinating things about Regulation E, and like, I can't even say that I'm especially on top of this, the metagame just changes so much between every event. Like, you're really seeing different strategies succeed. I don't think there are many people who would have like gone into Toronto and said like Ogerpon is not going to be on the top 12 in day 2. Like, that's one of those bets that somebody would give you like 100 to 1 odds on and expect to like, oh, it's a bet. I'm going to make money off this sucker who thinks Ogerpon isn't going to be in the top of the usage. But moving forward, like, it's hard to say like whether Urshifu is really going to stay on top. I have to imagine the Ogerpons are going to come back. It's not like they're suddenly bad Pokemon. It's just like a really dynamic meta, and that's something that I love about it compared to Regulation D, which was just like beginning to settle a lot by the end of September.
Yeah, so, okay, Chuppa, what happened with the Ogerpon? Because I'm trying to figure this out. We had 2 Ogerpon in Top Cut, and it was a Cornerstone and a Teal Mask, right? So not Hearthflame and Wellspring. The same 2 Pokemon that, I think in Peoria, when you combine their usage, it was like 86% or something between Hearthflame and Wellspring on day 2. And now, as you mentioned, fall straight off the graphic on day 2 of Toronto. So what is going on with the new legendary with Ogerpon? Because as you're saying, I also don't anticipate it to stay off that graphic for long.
Yeah, so I think one particular thing that was going on at Toronto was top players were looking at Leal for inspiration. Like, obviously, that's what I was doing. There were a lot of people using what I'm going to call the Rinia team, like that pairs up Furigraph and Choice Scarf Urshifu, just as a really deadly duo. There's the team that Paul used with Roaring Moon and friends. A lot of the most common teams at the event are just cores that don't use an Ogerpon. Like, maybe you could be tacking an Ogerpon onto them, but in general, some of the most common teams weren't using it. And then even outside of that, maybe some of the people like trying to innovate a little bit harder and finding success also, we're not really messing around with the Ogerpon forms quite as much. They thought they had some other ideas, like, maybe Pokemon like Arcanine instead. It's honestly a little bit tough to say why Ogerpon fell off, or part of it could just be this rise in like Terra Dragon is a really reliable defensive typing. There's a lot of Pokemon kind of just able to give themselves like more or less total immunity to the 2 big Ogerpon forms, and maybe people just got tired of running Ogerpon into a Terra Dragon Golden Co every game.
Well, even if you think about that, though, like I think one of the other factors building on it is all of the flying, the actual offensive flying attacks that we have in this format that people haven't been using before. So, like, Roaring Moon kept being hit or miss, but now it's very popular. Obviously, Landorus is there with Terra Blast. The Tangang and Gavin and that whole crew brought the Choice Scarf Salamence with Hurricane and Pelipper, right? So I think it's kind of it's tough out here for a grass type at some points.
Yeah, and like this was definitely, like you said, one of the events that those flying types are out in like the most force, especially like Roaring Moon really riding high of like having knockoff in its moveset instead of like, maybe more vanilla moves like Crunch or Throat Chop or Jaw Lock instead. There really is like a lot of easy ways for like standard teams to just add a strong flying type and go after Ogerpon. This is really some of the strongest that flying types have been this generation.
All right, I'm gonna drop some stats, and then we can brainstorm a little bit. Because looking back at Toronto, because both of y'all said you don't necessarily imagine that these Ogerpons are gonna be out of sight, out of mind for too long. But if we're looking at kind of like that day 1 and day 2 usage, the third region in a row, the highest conversion rate for the top most used Pokemon was the Rapid Strike Urshifu. So it's having the most success out of the entire field, making it into day 2. And the lowest conversion rate among the 10 most used was actually the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, just kind of dropping off as the Urshifu went up. So what kind of environment then do we kind of think we need to see from the Wellspring Ogerpon? Or is it kind of more so that typical everyone's moved on, hey, maybe it's a surprise factor, people have dropped Terra Dragon? Because it kind of seems hard to justify it over Urshifu in a lot of teams unless you do have a setup mon that you're trying to make sure you have that follow me utility for.
Yeah, actually, I'm just realizing something for the first time. I think Ogerpon Wellspring is like kind of symptomatic of, what people like to call balanced teams. Like, let's say a team that did really well at Fury was like Ogerpon, Chi-Yu, Booster Icy Fluttermane, King Gambit. Overall, just like the team did not have speed control outside of this Booster Icy Flutter and kind of relied more on stuff like Ogerpon Wellspring for a bit of bulk. And I think at this point in time, more offensive teams with stuff like Tailwind are just stronger than that. So I think maybe what's going on here is that the teams that are using Ogerpon Wellspring the most are teams that are just behind the curve in terms of the metagame and are trying to use these like bulkier ideas that have kind of just been phased out by the Tornadus teams becoming better and better refined overall.
Well, speaking of your tornadoes, looking on your team, one thing that we always find interesting, like obviously we're called OHKO, we know. We look at teams that use inaccurate moves. We talked to James about it in his interview, how he used Power Whip on his Ogerpon to win the regional, and obviously Brambleghast before that, missing Power Whip 4 times consecutively on stream. And you have different moves like Head Smash and Rock Slide and Bleakwind Storm and potential Icicle Crash instead of Ice Spinner, right? So you're very comfortable, at least with this team of 6, to risk it, to take the chance that your move's not going to connect, compared to Riley when he won Pittsburgh, very like adamantly saying like, I don't have a single move that can miss on my team. I ran Flamethrower instead of Heat Wave on Heatran, right? I went for all the consistent options there that I know, even if I'm doing less damage, I am consistently doing damage. I don't have to roll any RNG to see if it lands or not. So where do you fall on that divide? Like, I see you have a lot of inaccurate moves here, but how often are you clicking a Icicle Crash, or are you just worried I'll just click Sacred Sword because I know it's going to hit 100% of the time? Like, what do you do when you have inaccurate moves?
I think one answer that I'm going to give, I just throw a lot of them out, and a lot of the time they're going to hit, and I'm going to get great rewards for it. I think one thing that has to be said for these inaccurate moves compared to their counterparts, like let's talk about Bleakwind Storm versus Air Slash. Air Slash is always going to hit, but it's hitting one Pokemon. It's not even as strong as a spread Bleakwind, and Bleakwind going for those like speed drops. Even if something outran you get a speed drop, it's probably not going to be outrunning something as fast as Tornadus on the next turn. Or in the case of like Arcanine's Rock Slide, Arcanine getting a turn 1 flinch with Rock Slide can be game deciding just because of how much damage this move is putting out. Oftentimes the opponent is not going to have a chance to recover from a single flinch. So a lot of these inaccurate moves have like great side effects to make up for their lower accuracy, and a lot of the time it's going to be possible to come back from like maybe one or two misses of these moves too, just because of like how much damage they're putting up into the other slot, especially with like really great spread moves like that, where like you're still probably accomplishing something at least decent with your turn if something like Bleakwind or Rock Slide goes 1 for 2. If it goes 0 for 2, you might be in trouble, but that's really not going to be happening so often.
Before we talk about other things around, because you've been all about this team, is there any burning, pressing questions about Chuppa's team that you have to ask.
Wait, about this team of 6? Am I?
Yeah.
Is this a segue or was I?
No, I'm making sure.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Sorry.
making sure.
I thought maybe like Sierra knew a question I was going to ask. Instead, no. I don't think I have anything left on this team because, like, we saw it when we talked about it last week, winning back-to-back regionals and whatnot. I guess my other question related to Chuppa here on Toronto is, who was in your 14 rounds of Swiss and all your top 8, top 4 finals, who was the toughest opponent that you played in Toronto? Like, even if you beat them, like, who was the toughest person?
Yeah.
I might have to say Rokov. Like, we went 3-3 in games. Rokov is obviously a great player, and I don't think I'd had a real tournament set against him before, or at least not one like this. And it was just like, losing to him in Swiss and then being able to, kind of return the favor to him in top 4 was just like really exhilarating. But I felt like every single game against Rokov, I had to be so on top of my game. He wasn't giving me anything for free. There's probably like other people that I could think about, but Rokov, just in terms of like being able to play 6 great games against somebody that I respect so much as a player, was really fun, and happy that I was able to get the win against him when it counted the most.
And for anyone who doesn't remember, Rogov had the Reggie Draco team on stream. The crazy, what was it? Draco Meteor expecting Fluttermane to switch out and then one-shotting the Pokemon on the switch-in. Choice Scarf Terra Poison or Shifu Rapid Strike. Like, there was some really cool tech on Rogov's team. So I can imagine that being a little difficult to play against.
Yeah, and like one other fun thing about that matchup was like in a lot of the games we were bringing that same like Tornadus, Rillaboom, Arcanine, Urshifu core, like, maybe with some changes. And then I don't think I ever brought Shenpao, and I don't think he ever brought Reggie Draco, but sometimes we were also bringing a Ghost type, whether that was my Flutterman or his Golden Go. So it's really like a battle between some pretty similar Pokemon, but our sets just weren't quite the same on any of them besides, like, I guess we had similar Tornadus and Rillaboom, but very different Urshifu. The very different Arcanine made it feel like, relatively skilled matchup where just figuring out how to use similar pieces better was kind of the determining factor in who was going to win around.
And I want to get a little bit more, not philosophical, because that's not the right word, but kind of other ways about your Toronto run, because obviously when we look at your history as a player, you've been in this game for a while, and you have this really long list of accomplishments that's missing this first place. So how do you kind of maintain this confidence coming into each event, the motivation after getting these second places? Because I think I have down that you have 3 second places at regionals. You have like the top 4s. You have like 7 top 8s.
I have 4 second places. It's ridiculous. Like it was a bit of a streak.
Yeah. So how do you keep that motivation up to come out there and keep going for that first place spot?
Yeah, I think, like, if anything, a second place is not a failure. It's almost a success without quite being there, but it's not the same thing as a failure. Getting second place doesn't mean that you're doomed to second place. It means that you can keep giving yourself that shot to, like, succeed over and over again until you figure out a way to get it right. Especially after, like, losing to somebody like Jisiok in San Diego finals, just like, I don't know, it really set the tone for my year where it's like, okay, I'm really ready to succeed at the top. I'm going to push other, like, great players to their absolute limits to be able to get wins against me. And I'm just going to keep trying to do that for the rest of the season. Took a little while before I was able to make it to finals again, but I definitely had some other, like, really strong finishes along the way, and I never want the seconds to define me. Even to me, it's like, people like to call it a curse, but it's sort of just like a pattern that I was trying to break. It doesn't have to be the thing that defines me.
Yeah, because even at that point, you're no longer the bridesmaid, right? You're always the bridesmaid. Now you're the bride, Chuppa. So you got that first place finish, and you have a much better perspective than I think a lot of other people do if they had a lot of second places or even all your top 8s at regionals and ICs and stuff. Like, ever see like Talladega Nights, like, if you ain't first, you're last. Like, second place is first loser, right? So other people definitely don't feel as strong as you did. But my question is, you finally broke through in Toronto. If you go back to any of those other 4 regionals that you finished second place in, would you trade the Toronto Regional Championship to be the insert regional champion of one of those second places? Like, was there another one you wish you won more than this actual Toronto regional?
Probably like San Diego's the only one that I'd like talk about, just because like first regional of like the new generation is just so significant. I still kind of wish that I'd been able to put myself in the spotlight as like the player to watch at the start of the generation. Obviously, like I got around to the win eventually, though. I really wouldn't like go back and try and alter things, because maybe I'd end up in a different place now that I wouldn't be as happy with. But if anything, probably have to say San Diego, just because that first win of the generation is just like such a defining thing. I can, probably say so much about some of the people that won first regionals, like in other generations, like let's say Aaron Traylor with that like GMAX Charizard back in Dallas 2020. It's stuff that people remember, and I'm just the guy that brought Doza to the finals, and the villain never wins at the end of the day.
That's where you curse it, frankly, because I had to pull up the San Diego regionals to remember what team you were running, because I only remembered the Palmet. I'm sorry, bud, but I'm kind of it's the John Doza Tatsugiri curse. I'm sorry, like it can't win, but that I want to know through the time of Scarlet and Violet so far. I mean, you've definitely not been a stranger to playing different types of teams, different types of little archetypes. What's kind of been the favorite that you've stuck around with? Because the Palmet's always been something that I have associated with.
Yeah, no, Palmot was something that I really loved like early in the format, but I think like by the time Regulation B rolled around, I could tell Palmot was like really starting to show cracks, and it was sort of just like, this is still a Pokemon that I know how to use amazingly, and I have a great team kind of developed around Palmot. But I don't know if Palmot's going to be on it in the long term. It's a Pokemon that I really love using, but in terms of like whether it's my favorite or not, it would be kind of tough to say. Maybe like Chien-Pao Dragonite is definitely up there, because that's a team that like I feel like the team that I piloted at NAIC to a top 8 finish was really something like more than almost any other team that I used this format. It was my own. I was working on it with just just Lexar and myself a lot of the time. It's kind of just like making my own tweaks to it, when a lot of the other teams like San Diego team is something that Mike D'Angelo built. I have a personal attachment to it, but is it my team? Only kind of. Toronto winning team, is it my team? No, it's Sanvi's team, or it's Hirafumi's team. The NAIC team with Chien-Pao, Dragonite, Golden Go really was something that I felt like I was able to craft myself, and it's something that I have a lot of pride in being able to do.
See, I actually associate you with another electric typing Pokemon, and I don't know if you're gonna think about it, but if we go back to all the PCs and MSSs back in the day, you were a Thunderous guy. All of the time, like Sierra, you don't even understand.
I don't even know.
If you rolled into Brooklyn on a Saturday in 2015, you knew Chuppa was running double genies trying to hack you out of your Top Cut spot. You just knew it was happening. So I've always associated with you with that double genie core and Thunderous. So is that an accurate statement from like the ORS days that you were very much into the Thunderous?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I think like I am somebody that's going to do whatever it takes to win, and that means like I'm going to use teams that I find enjoyable. It's tough for me to win if I'm not using a team that I enjoy, but using like a Pokemon that not only is it just generally strong, there's a lot of objectively good things about Thunderous, but I think what a lot of like players, even at the top level, are kind of afraid to do is just like move the odds in their favor in ways that like people might see as dirty. Stuff like, the fact that I'm unafraid to go for like turn 1 Tailwind Rock Slide with Tornadus and Arcanine. Maybe this is just the evolution of like double genie lead. We're opening with like Rock Slide Thunder Wave, and turn 2 is probably going to be Rock Slide Swagger if like there's a Cresselia on the field. I think that's a really good point, that like maybe there's some like patterns in my gameplay of just being unafraid to use some of these like, cheekier duos of Pokemon and just take what the game gives me in terms of RNG.
There. And I want to take this point too, because we dove right into, hey, yo, you're a regional champion. You're doing some really cool things, but you've been involved in this game for a while, and maybe not everyone who's listening quite knows your history in the game. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about how you kind of got started in this journey that you've been on through VGC so far.
Yeah, so I've been playing since 2010. I first found out about regionals through Pokey Beach, told my dad, like, hey, there's going to be a regional in Newark. We can take a bus there. Let's do it. He's like, yeah, sure, that sounds easy. Loved the event, did way better than I expected for my first event where, across my whole team, I might not have had a 31 IV on anything. We're just talking about like soft resetting for stuff. The team was not that hot, but it was, Palkia and Kyogre can kind of do a lot, even if you're a little kid just spamming Surf. And I really found myself like kind of enjoying the competitive aspect of it because that's, I've always been an intensely competitive person. Having this game that I know that like I'm not great at yet, but I want to become great at really was a theme of like me continuing to go to these events over and over again, eventually getting a senior regional championship win. That was the last one about 12 years before the big Toronto win. And then kind of like, letting myself know that I am capable of these things. And over my time, with the 1 year in senior division and then many years in master division, really trying to get up to that ceiling again, like with however many regional cuts, with however many IC day twos, just trying to get back to that same place.
And you beat Aaron, right? Didn't Aaron say that on stream in the seniors?
Yeah, even like I definitely like don't ever get very easy matches in my finals, like playing against people like Aaron in seniors, or like my first Masters finals was against Ray. But it was just like really surreal in this event where like I wasn't familiar with the other people playing, and I'm getting ready for like the round that I didn't even realize was going to be finals, and people are like, "Yo, your opponent kind of won U.S. Nationals the previous year. You better be ready."
No big deal, yeah.
Just some scrubs that just won U.S. Nationals. No bigger anything. So then, in your time then playing, you right out the gate, you got to achieve this height. You said to getting second places, these top fours, these top eights, that you haven't necessarily lost motivation because, like, the second place is still a really good accomplishment, even if it's not the best accomplishment. Has there ever been a time, though, during your years of playing where maybe that motivation kind of has dipped? Because that is a long time to be playing this game, right? A lot of people do go through their kind of ups and downs with how they feel about it.
Yeah, so I think like there've definitely been dips. There were a few years where like maybe I didn't have anything better to show for that year than like maybe one regional top 8 or something, or like I think the COVID era of VGC, so really starting in like early 2020 through early 2022 was absolutely a low point for me. I was like, able to qualify for the Players' Cups just because getting top 256 on like Battle Spot wasn't super hard. Didn't have deep runs in any of them. And even by the time tournaments had come back, I really did not put up good finishes during some of those first regionals I attended. Like, I think I was 1-4 drop at Secaucus regionals, 4-3 Vancouver, 6-3 NAIC, really just nothing very remarkable. And it took me a while to realize, like, hey, I was not trying my hardest during this COVID era of like lots of online tournaments, but now that we're back in person, I'm fired up again, and really made London 2022 a great event for myself, getting all the way to like 32nd place at Worlds, and kind of using that as a reminder, like, no, I think I am great at this game, and then kind of carrying that energy, like moving forward into the start of like the current Gen 9 era of VGC.
And you were undefeated day one Swiss, right? And in London too. So that was that's a big accomplishment. That's like, that goes on, I think, I don't know if it fits on the graphic. I don't know how we would write that on the graphic. Plus you have better accomplishments to put, but like that is like stream graphic worthy note, like went undefeated day one Swiss World Championship.
Yeah, and I think like London mirrored like Toronto in a lot of ways, where it's like, okay, I don't necessarily feel super ready for this event, but I'm using a team that I know is strong. Somebody like Simone has helped me get ready with the team, and then kind of just getting this amazing result and being like, wow, I'm proud of this. But going into this, I was expecting like a much more like, kind of tepid result, maybe not winning the event, maybe going even or something. It's always funny to look back in hindsight.
One thing, sorry, I just had a thought of, or I've been wondering for weeks now since the finals happened. So I was backstage, I wasn't casting, I was working the production line, and I was talking with the producers and all the people running wires and the whole group, and they don't know Pokemon as well as we do, right? And so that's my job to tell them what's happening, who's going to win. And one thing, like we talked about last week, one thing that the production line can understand is when there's just a mushroom left, that person's about to lose. Because they know Amogus doesn't do damage. We've ingrained that into their heads enough, like, okay, it's just a mushroom, the other guy's gonna win. that finals match, game 2, it felt like there was a world that Chua was about to pull off the Amoonguss comeback. And all of us on the line were terrified of it, like, oh my god, this is going to be the most incredible comeback ever if he gets a 3-turn sleep and then does this. But we forget how it went down. But when you were playing that match, did you feel like there was any world Amoonguss could pull that comeback off, or did you feel like it was already over?
Yeah, no, I really went back and forth on this for a little bit because for a while I'm thinking like, this endgame looks really good for me. I think I know what to do to win. And then like seeing like, oh, my Ice Cold Crash did 75% to Landorus when I thought it was going to do 100%. I get a big Surging Strikes on Amoonguss after that. I just realized that I miscalculated some things and it was going to be, kind of a nail biter when I thought I might have a slightly cleaner win. And then realizing like, as I went for that last close combat into Amoonguss, if Urshifu does not get this knockout, Amoonguss is just going for Pollen Puff on Chen Pao. Urshifu is getting knocked out by Rocky Helmet, Chen Pao is getting knocked out by Pollen Puff, and I will have to play a third game against one of the best players in the world to see whether I'm actually going to be able to do this. So seeing Urshifu actually get there with the knockout was just such a huge surprise for me because I was really on this roller coaster of emotions between everything being great, everything not being great, and then everything being great again.
We could tell on your face, literally, like you were stunned when Close Combat got the knockout. Like you just like popped up and you're like, "Oh, I actually did it," because it felt like it was gonna fall away. Who knows if I don't think you would mental boom in game 3, but you'd definitely be frustrated. You'd be frustrated. You'd have to play a game 3 in that spot, but you really were smart. And I think Sierra and Aaron talked about it during the broadcast that in those moments you click Close Combat instead of Surging Strikes because it was only 1 tick of Rocky Helmet damage. And I do think that is what won you the game.
Definitely, and like one thing that's kind of important to note about like Rocky Helmet is some of the best that's ever been in the game. Maybe, since we had stuff like Kangaskhan dominating the format, another thing that you probably remember from those 2015 PCs. But knowing when to go for a close combat instead of a Surging Strikes, like even if it's going to be a little bit weaker because of Mystic Water boosting Surging Strikes, just like taking that smaller hit from Rocky Helmet is so important. And sometimes like the defense drop doesn't matter. In this case, like with an Amoonguss, that was kind of just like if it looked at Urshifu like, the wrong way, threw a Pollen Puff in its direction, Urshifu's going down anyway. Just kind of close combat to take the same amount of damage and not mind the drawback.
So, in this hypothetical world, too, where this Amoonguss that shouldn't have been able to win actually wins the game, did you feel confident enough in this matchup anyways to take that game 3? Obviously, Chua played to every out. He's not an opponent you could sleep against. But it seemed like the matchup, just on paper, it looked like it was kind of in your favor anyway.
Yeah, I'm honestly not totally sure because I think like Paul was playing it great, but it always felt like there are more things that he could be doing if he like really thought about it a little bit, like defensive plays, like maybe putting an Amoonguss in, like if he knew I was going to go for Moonblast on Iron Hands, or predicting me not to bring Rillaboom. Terra Water on Iron Hands is really tough for me to break, so I would have felt okay about a game 3, but it always felt like Paul like kind of had more potential to change up his game plan than I did, and some ways that could be really deadly for me. And of course, like something that really made like the early game of game 2 so one-sided for me was that really risky fake out play that he went for, which is just like kind of uncharacteristic of the way Paul plays. Just a very hard commitment to me going for one particular thing. Maybe in game 3 I don't get lucky and have Paul like take a risk like that doesn't work out for him, or maybe he takes a risk and it does work out for him. It's just so tough to say how it would have gone.
Yeah, we live in a world of many butterfly effects, right? And if the one decision changes another, obviously we're happy that the game 3 didn't happen because we get to see you here this week. And Chua's got 6. He'll get that 7th one eventually, right? Now it's your time to start catching up to Chua,
Everybody else in the top 4 had like Raghav was the only other person in top 4 who had like 1 regional win. Jamie has 2 at least, I want to say, in Europe, so maybe it doesn't count. But Paul had enough. I don't feel too bad about taking 1.
Oh my goodness, Chuppa with the breaking news on. You sound like Jamie demeaning his own accomplishments on the broadcast.
No, European regional championships count for something.
Well, they have been special events, right? They're not regionals, the same title, but obviously you get the world's qualification out of it. And there are great players in Europe. Okay, I'm sure they could handle. We have a Team USA. I guess Team Europe would be hard because then they have a huge advantage. We're one country and they have all the countries. Like, what would you say, since we're on this USA Europe conversation, who would you say is the best player in Europe in VGC, either currently or maybe the last couple of years, whatever metric you want to use? And then what is the best overall country in Europe you think at VGC?
I mean, I'll start with the easy one. The best country is Italy. It's been that way since I couldn't even say when, since probably 2017 or so. Maybe Germany was still kind of keeping it close because Marcus was still really active at the time, but since then it's definitely swung towards Italy just because they have so many people competing at the top compared to other countries, which oftentimes have maybe in England there's something let's say 5 top level players, and in Italy it's that number's 15 or 20 or something. Best player in Europe, that's really tough to say. I mean, I think Pokéalex might be one of the first people that comes to mind. Just incredibly dominant win at NAIC, super well deserved. So I think for best European at the moment, that's probably the first person that comes to mind.
Now the real question: would you absolutely demolish him in a 1v1 though for America on top?
Oh, I don't know, man. I wasn't able to at NAIC during our Top Cut set. Maybe I'll have to work on my team.
Wait, was that the set with the time? Was that the set with the self trick? The self tricks choice? Oh my god, that was so cool. Even though you lost that match, everybody was like, "No, Chuppa's the winner in our hearts," because you choice locked your own iron bundle to get the higher damage on it, and we felt like it almost would have worked out for me and Scott.
I made some both sides made some misplays. Alex made a misplay that let me back into the game, and then I made one of my own to kind of seal my own fate. It was just a really funny end game. It's so it's really interesting to go for plays like that and not have them work out, because I'm happy that I found this out. It's just a shame that I couldn't push it to a game 3 or push it to a top 4 at the event or anything. So I'm still left chasing this IC top 4.
And just remember, Sierra, Chuppa got second with Dondozo at a regional. Alex won NAIC with Dondozo. So if we're having a one-on-one discussion here, I'm just saying Pokéalex might have my money on him.
There's no Tatsugiri.
Pokéalex didn't come on the podcast and call European regionals. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I'm basing this off.
Dondozo points don't count if there's no Tatsugiri. Dondozo without Tatsugiri is kind of it's almost like a guy in a trench coat. It's not even a Dondozo under there. It's just some different bulky water type.
Wow. I love having Chuppa. He's got some hot takes. He's got some strong takes. This is what we need on the pod, Sierra. We need some strong takes like this.
Dude, it wouldn't be American VGC without Europe catching a few strays.
You're not.
I just feel bad. I just feel bad. They're listening. They're like, oh, one of my favorite players, Chuppa across the floor, is on the podcast. Let me listen in. And then they're just yeah, they're all right, I guess.
One of my favorite players, American Sanvi, is on.
Oh, that's the real question. Okay, let's say you guys best of 3 with this team. We put it up to charity or something. Winner gets to choose $100 charity of their choice or something like that. Would you be interested in having that match against Sanvi and having it streamed?
Oh, I don't know, man. Mirrors are not fun. I had to, play against this team. Somebody that I was coaching wanted to use it at the last local. We end up playing in finals. It's such a stressful matchup. There's so many inaccurate moves that are being thrown out because, like you said, the team is there's just so many different inaccurate moves. There's so many side effects. There's just so many things going on at the same time. I think taking on Sanvi with the team would also be tough because he's got hundreds of games of experience with this team, and I have maybe 100 at this point. So it would be really tough for me to kind of stand up to his level of experience.
That's not what I was looking for. Chuppa, I was hoping you say these colors don't run. USA. And then you lock in the match against Sambi. Because now you're saying Sambi's, he's going to win the 1v1. That's concerning.
I know.
Where'd the confidence go? Where'd the confident champion Chuppa
I'm pretty sure Sambi isn't coming to LAIC, so maybe I get to call him a coward for not having the Torn Arc face off in Brazil.
Oh man.
What could have been? But hey, if we're gonna drop some hot takes here. I got a couple of lightning round questions, and this is not just for you, Chuppa. This is also for Joe Brown, and we can call this on your end, Joe. I don't know. It's like it reminds me of that game, going up against a fifth grader. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? Are you smarter than a regional champion? But it's just actually takes about a couple of Pokemon that we have currently going on in our format and stuff. All right, you two ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Best current format. I can't talk. Best current Pokemon in the format.
Guess first. I need a second.
I'm going
You're
hands.
supposed to steal his answers.
You're going hands?
Yeah.
Why?
Even though I didn't utilize hands, I think in terms of its stat spread, it's just it's format defining for so many different reasons. It can fit onto so many different teams. I do think you can argue any of Urshifu, Fluttermane, or Iron Hands for best Pokemon. I do not think you can argue anything besides those three.
Well, Scott Glaza would argue Landorus Therian, so I don't know if I have to advocate for my boy who cannot speak for himself currently and talking Landorus. I think I'd lose that fight, so I'm not going to do it. I think I'm going to lock in Urshifu Rapid Strike just because I've not had a lot of success with Iron Hands when I use it. I feel like it does a lot less damage than I want, and maybe I'm just not training it right, and then it takes more damage than I'm anticipating. But I feel like Urshifu really warps everything around it in a matchup. It can completely, just change your fate on the Mystic Water set with it's made Tornadus very relevant in this form because of Tailwind and Rain Dance and all these other things. I feel like Iron Hands is a Pokemon you can slap onto a team, but Urshifu is a Pokemon that you build a team around. So that's why I'd give it that credit.
Okay. All right, next question. And Joe Brown, you have to answer first, or else you can just steal Chuppa's answer, so then it's not really, are you smarter than a regional champion? It's not his answer. Yeah. All right, come on. All right, most overrated top used Pokemon right now.
Oh, jeez. I can't even say Chi-Yu because it fell off the graphic. That's been my go-to for so long. I have been such a Chi-Yu denier because I've just never liked the same inaccurate
issues. You denied it right off of the top 12 chart.
Oh my gosh. All right, I'm going to say Rillaboom is overrated. I feel like everybody likes the Rillaboom because of Grassy Glide and Fake Out and U-Turn. I feel like your Assault Vest could be used in much better spots, which a lot of times the AV is taken up in that spot that you'd rather somewhere else on the team, the Iron Hands, or if you're Jamie, the Thunderous Therian on that slide. The Fake Out is not that relevant. I don't feel like Iron Hands is Fake Out. Some other things have it, but there's, Ghost typing and Terra Ghost and stuff. And yeah, I feel like on grass types, I'd rather have an Ogerpon form or an Amoonguss or, even our OHKO team with Sinistra. I feel like there's a lot of other grass types I'd prefer than Rillaboom currently.
I think I'm going to go with King Gambit. Sierra, do you know if King Gambit made the top 12 day 2 usage at Toronto?
It did not.
Okay. You can still go if you want, though.
It's still a top use Pokemon, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just I don't think King Gambit's the absolute worst, but just it consistently just it does not actually feel that strong playing against it right now. It just feels like King Gambit kind of forces these mind games, and if you're the other player, you still have a shot to win those mind games. King Gambit isn't really it doesn't have the cheating tools that something like an Urshifu does to win those. It's just no, it you can force it to waste so many sucker punches even after your opponent's invested resources into it. It's not even that it's terrible, but it's just its usage is definitely slowing down a little bit. And I think people really need to kind of relearn how to use it for it to, kind of start taking up a top 12 spot again.
Yeah, it's typing kind of, and I always feel bad about a Pokemon that feels like it can't really do too much until you set it up. It kind of underwhelming across the board. You can just kind of KO it before it actually sets up, and then you're just solid. So it's good. So I like both answers. I also just hate Rillaboom. Not even for any utility. It's just ugly. So we're
Sierra's big on aesthetics. If you haven't listened to the pod, Chuppa, every episode she just dogs on different Pokemon, either plushie forms of them or just their generic sprite. She's just not. Don't ask her about Raticate. Don't ask her about the Loyal 3. What are your thoughts on the Loyal 3?
Yeah, the Loyal 3 are kind of funny. I think they're just like, I mean, Pheasantipity is pretty normal, but then the other two are just like kind of so weird that they end up like kind of good as a result. And I'm gonna come back to Thwacky. I like Thwacky. Thwacky and Monkey Dory are both just like monkeys that you put inside like a Laffy Taffy factory, and they just end up looking like so goofy and so distinct for it. God, I'd love a reason to use Thwacky at some point. I don't think I'm going to find it, but maybe one day.
One day. Hey, you got your Worlds invite. You might as well, right? What do you got to lose if you go to a regional with Thwacky?
Sure, man. Let's bring Thwacky to Sao Paulo and see what happens. Who cares?
Yeah, let's go, Chuppa.
All I have to say, because I'm just saying the plushies are super, super ugly. Chuppa, I DM'd you on Twitter, Joe Brown. I messaged you on Discord. I messaged you a picture of this Monkey Dory plushie. You cannot tell me that this is probably one of the worst plushies that you have ever seen. First off, the base Pokemon it's off of is dreadful. This plushie, though, like, tops the chart. It's bad.
Oh, that's tough. That
I can't imagine that one being flying off the shelves at the store. That's what I'll say.
No, I don't know if like you guys have been to the Nintendo World Store in New York very often, but obviously it's like usually going to be pretty well stocked in terms of Pokemon plushies, and there's always like you can tell a lot about the Pokemon fan base by the Pokemon that are not selling plushies. And at Nintendo World, it became kind of infamous that there were always like Panpour and Pansear, the little Gen 5 elemental type monkeys sitting around. I think the same thing happened with like there's some kind of infamous post of like Zamazenta plushes sitting around.
Yeah,
Plushin was sold out. That's going to happen with the Loyal 3. Though these plushes are not moving. They are going to be collecting dust.
No, there's a certain demographic that's going to buy the Okie Dokie plushie, and we'll move on from that conversation. So, but that one will definitely sell compared to the other two.
They're all bad. They're all they're just not good. But we'll go off of the hater arc here. Go back onto Are You Smarter Than a Regional Champion? Best current archetype that we have in the game. Balance, Tailwind, Trick Room. It's never Trick Room. But best archetype that we got going on.
I would have loved to say Trick Room, but I just don't have the results. I don't have the results to back it up, right? So
you have to go out and get the results. Like that's how you claim that you have the best archetype. You get the results.
Yeah, dude, Chuppa's crushing it right now, honestly. Best archetype, I would I don't know how to say, like the fire, water, grass balance, like the Urshifu, Rillaboom, and then like fire type could be Heatran, could be Ogerpon, Hearthflame, like because that core, I think that team almost universally always has Tornadus on it, and Tornadus currently enables a lot of different Pokemon to succeed. So I guess like I would consider that different than like a Golden Go balance team or like a Kingambit balance team. I don't know how Chuppa would agree with me here. So I would say like Fire, Water, Grass, Torn is my opinion.
Yep, I completely agree. I think it's sort of just like Torn and Friends is the best team in the format right now. After getting like wins at both of my events over the weekend, like a week after regionals, still pretty convinced this is like the team right now. I don't know what I'd say is close to it. Like, I think Paul's team is like not too far behind. And then after that, I just think there's a bit of a drop in quality. It's just so tough for these other teams to keep up with Tornadus. I think the Torn teams still have like more evolving to do, but also like, I don't know, Torn in its current form is just an amazing team. You get this like great fire, water, grass synergy, like you pointed out. So there's still potential for a lot of defensive switching, a lot of room to make like different leads and throw your opponent off between games. The ceiling on the team is just so high.
See, Sierra, I might not be smarter than a regional champion, but I am just as smart as, since we agreed on that one.
I'm proud of you. Let's see if you can answer the next question then. Because it's just a yes or no. You got a 50-50 chance, even if you don't know. Is Roaring Moon actually good? Because
I've been saying it since like Regulation B that Roaring Moon is actually a good Pokemon. I don't think it's the end of the world that a Pokemon does one thing exceptionally well. I think we've seen throughout the history of VGC, whether it be Kangaskhan or Xerneas or Calyrex, Shadow Rider, or Zacian clicking Behemoth Blade, or Dondozo, and that's been the downfall. It was like, oh, but you have to Terra Flying. Okay. And then it dunks you with the booster energy boost onto it. Like, people don't give Roaring Moon the chance. I think a lot of people, because it's so linear. But, like, how is that different than the team that's going to lead Tornadus or Shifu in 40 of their 45 games? Like, how is that any different? Like, yes, Roaring Moon is a good Pokemon. I don't care if it only does one thing. It does that one thing incredibly well.
I don't even know if I'd say that it does it, like, incredibly well. It does it decently. I don't think it's, like, terribly hard to shut down Roaring Moon with, like, the right resists, or especially with an Intimidate. But I agree with you. I think Roaring Moon's just, like, a solid Pokemon. I definitely don't think it's bad. It's, like, it's kind of beating those allegations that were thrown against it at the start of Regulation B, where it was, like, completely overused because, like, oh, it looks like it has a great stat spread. It looks like Salamence, and, like, it couldn't keep up with Fluttermane and Iron Hands and stuff. I think it just, like, settling into a relatively decent place in the format. I think, like, the knockoff buff has been really good for it. Just, like, knockoff is a pretty fun move, as long as you're not giving it to something like on the power level of Incineroar. It is an interesting move with some interesting interactions with a lot of things. I think, like, knocking off Rocky Helmet so that your Urshifu can actually go after Pokemon that formerly had a Rocky Helmet is something really cool that it can do. It's got, like, you know, booster attack and booster speed tailwind sets. It's definitely not a bad mon, and especially, like, you know, its place on teams kind of similar to Paul's is something that's really, like, holding it up in the format.
So let's go. Joe Brown, you're 2 out of 2.
Let's go.
I like that's fair. I feel like I'm seeing so much Roaring Moon everywhere now, but I guess too, it never really fell off, and the knockoff has been chef's kiss for it. It's kind of going into actually Roaring Moon territory as opposed to Roaring Mid territory. So
you're a big Roaring Mid fan. You're one of the original Roaring Mid users, Sierra.
Oh, you mean Roaring Mid haters?
No. I mean the terminology Roaring Mid. Like, I think you said it in Australia. Like, you were the first person that said it on broadcast.
Yeah, the first time was an accident. The second wasn't. But,
and you would have had so many chances to use it back then too, because, like, wasn't it on Alberto's second place team, or, like, Sam Pandelis was using it? There's a lot of Roaring Mid at that tournament.
It was probably one of those that I talked to, because I hosted OCIC. It's probably one of them that I asked, like, is it actually Roaring Mid? Like, what's going? Yeah, it's yeah, now I actually have to call it Roaring Moon. It's doing things, so okay. It's okay. All right, 2 more questions.
Okay.
You're doing very good with
I'm very
keeping up
nervous.
with our regional champion over here. This next question might get you. What is the most disrespected or underrated Pokemon out there right now?
This one probably does stump me because I'm not out in these streets like Chuppa in the Swiss rounds.
You're not out there winning the back-to-back MSSs.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not traveling the Northeast just racking up MSS and PC championships all over the place. So Chuppa has a lot more experience than me. The most, like, disrespected. Let me just pull up, like
underrated.
Toronto.
Something that should be so much better than, like, people give it credit for.
I mean, I'm struggling to think of anything, because recently, like, I've just been using, like, the #1 team. It doesn't have any Pokemon that people are disrespecting or think about it. So it's, like, it's tough for me to, like, add into this because I don't use bad Pokemon. I use good Pokemon that are good.
Well, Chef Amanda, I am very much used to using bad Pokemon. I like trying to win with fun things, but I'm not going to say King Gambit because then I'll lose because Chef has said that King Gambit's bad. So I will say the other version of King Gambit in this format, which is Urshifu Single Strike. I think people actually disrespect a lot. I think it was one time this weekend we just saw a straight up sucker punch, just OHKO, like from full health onto something, and obviously have Terra Dark and Black Glasses and Swords Dance and stuff. And maybe we have to get rid of the Terra Dark Black Glasses version and switch over to the Terra Poison, like how Ragov's Rapid Strike is Terra Poison, and just like, all right, I'm gonna need to set up Swords Dance, but once I do, I can sucker punch everything to oblivion. I feel like that the Urshifu Single Strike can actually have a place in this format. I don't know where it is, but I do think a lot of people just completely disregard it because it's not Rapid Strike.
I'm going to say Glamour. Like, I think Glamour is honestly, like, it might be the strongest part of some of, like, people have mostly just been using it on Dondozo compositions because they're such a good, like, playstyle fit for it in terms of like the speed that the two bonds play at or the goals that they're trying to accomplish, which are, kind of mostly about stalling. I think Lamore is just really interesting. Its problem is that there's some matchups that are just going to be really boring. Like if your opponent has an Amoonguss and a Heatran, Glamour just has to stay at home. It might not as well even be in your battle box at that point. But there are some teams that just like really do not fare too well against it. And I think it's something that I'm really interested to see explored a little bit more. It won a huge Japanese tournament over the weekend, so I think Glamour is the one that I'm going to put up for that.
Dude, there's a couple of Pokemon that I'm like, I kind of think of. First off, like, Amoonguss has been around forever, but it kind of feels like we're in a place right now where people kind of are disrespecting it a little bit. It kind of goes up and down. People are like, oh, you have to have at least an Amoonguss answer, if not 2 or 3. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Amoonguss who? I don't really care. I feel like we're in Amoonguss 2 era. Beyond that, I feel like Farigiraf is a Pokemon that constantly has, like, done really, really well. And then it's still just kind of memed and dunked on at any point in the road.
It's hard to take seriously because of its visuals. Like, you see Urshifu and it's like, okay, he's ready to mess me up. I understand how this Urshifu is going to ruin my day. But you see the lanky Farigiraf and he's just sitting there like, you better not click priority in front of me, sir. Like, it's hard to take it seriously visually.
I mean, the reason I find it hard to take Farigiraf seriously is the 70 base defenses. The Pokemon has a really like underwhelming stat spread that like you basically need to go full defense on for it to start having like nice calcs against like strong physical hitters like Chenpao or Urshifu. Farigiraf is honestly another great choice. I think it's there's definitely like more exploration to do with that Pokemon, but sometimes it just feels like a wet noodle. It doesn't do anything, and it's just like in some matchups it's just going to feel so much stronger than others.
Okay, but how much damage does it take from extreme speed? Because if you're calculating that's an infinite amount of KO. You're never going to take damage from it.
You're not wrong. Like that's the thing. That. No, Farigiraf really does like, the priority hate is just so strong for some of those trick room game plans that are like relying on maybe extreme speed or fake out to slow them down, like Farigiraf, and just like, clicking helping hand next to anything else that Farigiraf hangs out with is deadly. So that's a great point.
I just like seeing the giraffe. It's silly, goofy, but it's cool because you can't say we already have silly, goofy Pokemon. Have you guys ever seen an Iron Bundle going around? Have you ever seen this Golden Go? What about Sinistcha? We have a T Pokemon. Like, you can't just say Farigiraf's bad because it looks goofy, because that's half of our meta game right now. Let's be real, okay?
I don't know. I think not all Pokemon are equally goofy. I think Farigiraf probably holds
like
a higher pecking order in the goofy chart than some of the others you mentioned.
Yeah, like you listed 3 silly little guys. Everybody loves them. Farigiraf is sort of just like a little bit more like an unwieldy beast or something. It's not like don't put Farigiraf in the same sentence as Iron Bundle.
I feel like Farigiraf got bullied at school. Farigiraf is just as goofy, silly as the rest, but people are like, nah, it has a long neck and is a giraffe and stops priority. We hate this guy. We hate him. But he's just as goofy as the rest of them. Like, come on.
I mean, I guess like Bruxish is goofier, but I don't know if that's a compliment.
We hate Bruxish.
No,
That's what I'm saying.
Bruxish is just ugly. Like, it's not.
That's
good.
a Pokemon. So, like, if we're saying we don't take Farigiraf seriously because of its design, Bruxish is 100% a Pokemon we don't take seriously because of its design.
If we weren't taking Pokemon seriously because of the designs, then why did we ever take Chi-Yu seriously? It's just a little fish. It's
a legendary. You see the base stats?
He's just a little guy.
He could be a Polygon with those stats. I don't care. Like, just one little Polygon. It's all about the base stats.
I'm definitely going to use that line. That Pokemon might as well be a
okay?
Polygon, and I'd still use it.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Oh my god. Alright. Last question. Not so much a silly, goofy Pokemon. It's a cool Pokemon. We talked about Hizumi and Arcanine. It has won 4 regionals in a row. Is it going to win LAIC?
Yeah, I'm winning LAIC with it. What kind of question is that?
Oh!
Whoa! I love the confidence, Chuppa. I love it. And because I love it, I have to go opposite and say no. Because I'm rooting for myself, right? I have to... I'm sorry that you're breaking news that you're not winning LAIC because Hizumi and Arcanine is not winning LAIC.
To be honest, I'm not sure whether it's like sweep is going to continue. It's definitely felt like, I don't know, it's honestly a little bit confusing to me that it does have these 4 wins in a row when it's just like it's a relatively strong Pokemon. But people are probably like finally going to be respecting it a little bit more. But I'm sure like it's absolutely going to break into top 8, and then at that point it's only going to be a few games away from victory. So I don't know. It is a little bit tough to say whether it's going to get the 5 feet. It doesn't really roll off the tongue like any of the other beats, but Arcanine's going to make it happen. Maybe.
Okay.
We'll see. And I'm just saying, because Joe Biden, you're like, I have to go up against Chuppa here. Like, I literally just want a regional, 1 back-to-back MSSs. Like, if we're going down the checklist of things, like, the international is, like, literally right there. I don't know. Like, I feel like you got a pretty compelling argument
But I like my
here.
odds. It's Chuppa or the field. You know, I like my odds.
Yeah,
but
it's like international after winning a 30-person mid-season Connecticut. Like, come on, that might work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also like, it's not like you're the only one using Hizumi and Arcanine. It was like 30% of the field in Toronto. Yeah, you got everyone there. It's a good Pokemon. Everyone's like, I gotta put this on my team if I want a chance to win, because it's the only Pokemon winning right now. So,
Chuppa, if you lose to a European in the finals, it's gonna be so funny.
Yeah, right after the loss,
because you're back to the second place curse, and you also just talk trash about the entirety of Europe.
Oh no, the Europeans are going to be posting about me on Twitter. Just like let me lose to a Brazilian person. Like let Vovomax Ben 10 give you the business, and then we won't have to worry about this.
All right, we'll root for that then.
We'll see you just like cheering on as you're losing, as long as it wasn't to a European. just so make sure you're like, yes, lost to a Canadian. Let's go.
Well, let's talk
lost to a Canadian. Let's slow down.
Had to try and sneak that in there. That's my bad there. But
by the way, no Canadians in top 8 in Toronto. Just throwing it out there.
I'm not sure what Canadians are even doing at LAIC, if any.
No, actually, I don't really think any. I have to. That'll be it. We'll have to talk about that next week, because I have to look into that a little bit more. I don't know offhand. That's always interesting who can make it down. I didn't actually know Brazil was as far as it was. I was very surprised when flight booking at like how far this flight was. I thought it would be like just going to like Texas plus a couple of hours. It is not.
Well, it kind of. It is Texas plus a substantial amount of hours.
I thought it was a couple. I thought it was pretty close, but my bad. I learned, but that's all right. But hey, Chuppa.
Wait, Chuppa. Because I'm talking about the long flight, so I got a straight shot, right? I'm gonna be with one of our favorites, James Beck. What would you like me to ask him on the flight? Give me a question to ask him on the flight. And we know James isn't listening because he's not on this episode. So What what should I ask James Beck on our 9.5 hour flight to Sao Paulo?
Dude, I'm gonna need
Because I
James
think we're
Beck-
next to each other.
Yeah, I'm gonna need him to tell me what the best New York borough is.
Why does he say, does he say Staten Island?
I mean, I'm sure he's gonna be wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe you should word that as like, what's the best borough? And why is that Brooklyn? Like that's
Wow.
This is the spicy takes
Okay.
episode, so it's probably the better one to throw at him.
All right, I'll send you the message when I'll buy in-flight Wi-Fi just so I can message you. I'll spend my hard-earned money just to give you the answer.
I didn't know James was doing Brazil. Like, I'm not at all surprised, but this is yeah, I'm sure
he's got to defend his title.
Oh yeah, dude, that tournament didn't even have like 100 people playing at it.
And they were all European, is what Chuck was saying.
Oh my God. Hey, title defend.
IC champ is IC champ, bud. All right, Mr. Regional Champion.
Champ's a champ.
Good. My goodness. Okay, we're super appreciated having you on the episode. Before we let you go,
we asked some people in our community, and they want to know why you're Chuppa across the fourth, and I feel like that's a pretty obvious answer. But I would be remiss to not ask the question again, since the fourth does come up so often. But like, can you answer the pretty basic question of why you're Chuppa across the fourth?
Well, yeah, because the fourth is a cool number. Like, even if there aren't any other Chuppas, why wouldn't I want to have a cool number?
Okay.
There is other Chuppa, right? I have to ask now, because you're still like, why wouldn't I want a number?
Like, this is the part where I get out of the call. You guys gotta have me on another time to hear the rest of the story.
Oh, dang. Yeah.
The teaser. I love it.
I respect the grind. You have the content creator mindset. Check out next time. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff.
I've got so many arrows in the thumbnail. I'm looking sharp. You do not know what to expect.
4 question mark? Like, you know.
Oh my goodness. The all caps title. That's the strap, but all right, we'll find out next time, chat. So sorry, Blood, for asking that one. Before we let you go though, do you have any final words, Chuppa, or where can people find you if they want to hear more of your hot takes? See your absolutely terrifying Twitter post that you said the other day, the Incineroar one. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh my god, I'm glad people resonated with that post, and it was something that we could all relate to. I don't know. I'm just on Twitter as Chuppa VGC. I'm not especially hard to find. I'm good at coaching. Come to me for coaching. But thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate the chance to appear. It's just been an absolute blast talking with you guys. So I hope you enjoy both of the rest of your nights.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Appreciate you so much. Hope you don't get in too much trouble with the Europeans. If they all come after you at Brazil, we know what's happening.
I got your back, Chuppa. I got you.
Have a good rest of your night, eh?
Okay.
It was so much fun having Chuppa on the podcast. I feel like I learned a lot here, honestly.
Yeah, I mean the hot take machine. I am not used to. Chuppa's a good time. He's a really fun guy. Always been really nice to have conversations with. But he was a little sillier today than my normal conversations I have with him. I loved it.
Win a regional, and you can, in fact, say the hot takes. He's been saving them. But...
Yeah. Ever since like 2017, he's like, I can't wait to make a joke about this.
Imagine the hot takes if he does actually win LAIC. That's all I'm saying. And we'll have to make sure we'll have to reserve a time. We'll have to he'll be like hot commodity then. We'll be fighting every other podcast to have him on.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was a lot of fun. We are nearing the end of the episode though, which does mean that we get to our question of the week. And yet again, we went to Discord to ask our question. If you ever want to hear your question answered, by the way, feel free to leave a comment or be joining the Discord. If we don't have one in our comments, we'll ask in our Discord before we go live. This one this question coming out from Unblinking Bleb is favorite episode of the OG anime.
All right, so I want to make sure that this was not a fever dream that I had, and I'm going to Google it real quick. So if you want to go first, I'm going to turn my mic off so people don't hear my keyboard. But I want to make sure this is a real episode, because if it is, it's a banger.
Oh, now I feel like all the pressure's on me. So, I feel like I've seen the first episode of the anime so many times that it's like a special place in my heart. Every time that I'm like, oh, I gotta rewatch this series, to do that. Trying to think, because I feel like there's quite a few episodes that were really, really cool. The ship sinking and everybody was like underneath with it. That was pretty loaded. That was a pretty cool episode. Bye Bye Butterfree made me cry. The first Pokemon episode also made me cry. It's a little bit of a difficult one. I feel like, so I'll probably would have to say either the ship episodes because they were cool, or the first one because it's just so nostalgic. But if we're just going for OG piece of Pokemon content, then it would always be the first movie.
Come on, don't do the movie. Give me an actual episode of the anime.
I just gave you 2 episodes.
No, I know, but I'm saying, so lock in an episode. You got to choose one episode.
To choose one episode. When Ash dresses up as a girl so he can face the one grass type gym.
Okay. Thank you. I have found it. It is real. I'm trying to get the description of it, but it's not. It's not.
What is the episode? Let's see if I can give the description. I want to see if I remember this.
Okay, no. You were not gonna. It's from X and Y. Did you watch during X and Y?
Well, that's not like. Oh, okay. So.
Oh, okay. I get what you say. It is OG anime. Okay. Yeah.
We can say both. I did actually watch X and Y, though. I actually watched all the way through that. I watched that in French, actually.
Dude, okay. Well, that makes sense because X and Y. It makes sense to watch Kalos in French.
Yeah, you have to watch in French.
Okay, so do you remember Carl's Hawlucha? Do you remember this storyline? Do you remember a shiny Hawlucha in the X and Y storyline?
Yeah.
So, this episode... I remember watching this. I was at the 2015 Virginia Regionals at the barn, the classic barn that everybody loved back in the day. And by loved, I don't mean loved. And I was watching it on TV. And so it was a Hawlucha and a shiny Hawlucha. There was a Pokemon play going on, like Shakespeare or something. And the 2 Hawluchas were both vying for the main role in the play. And obviously they're going at each other because one's an understudy, one's shiny, one's not. And the whole episode was hilarious because the concept of like Pokemon putting on a production, like a Shakespeare production, and then the 2 Hawlucha trying to be the lead character in the play and stuff, and they ended up fighting at one point. Like, it was comic absurdity. Like, I couldn't believe what I was watching.
That's something else. I don't think there's other words for that, frankly.
Here we go. When light and dark collide, Carl's Hawlucha acted as a villain trying to take Carl's Snubbull away in a play.
Okay.
So they're like on a stage. I don't know what episode 51 of X and Y. Pull up your phone. Later on when we're done recording, watch that episode. Do you have a favorite X and Y episode then? Since you watched it, what was so good about it in French? Huh?
Nothing.
Wow.
So okay, I didn't actually hate the XY anime as much as I thought I would. So previously, I was very much on the hater train before that. I thought any anime past Gen 2 was just bad. And I was just like, oh, maybe I've just like outgrown it. But like actually going back and watching it, even like the cheesiest parts of it, because like my biggest thing was what's his nuts? The electric gym guy.
Lieutenant Surge?
Oh wait,
no,
in X and Y.
Oh, the little guy. Oh my god, what was his name?
Clement.
Something like that.
Clement.
Clement, yeah.
But he
And he
kept
had
having
little
the
sister
same.
Bonnie.
Yeah, so like first off, both of them were annoying. Second, he had the same catchphrase that was just overused, like to the point where it was very kid anime, and it was like, I don't want to watch this. But then when I actually gave it a chance, it ended up being good. But I can't actually name like a favorite moment. I do want to say though, because you were reading off a description for yours, I went back because I had to make sure it wasn't a fever dream for the episode that I listed. It's called Pokemon Sensation. It was the episode 26 in the very first season of Pokemon. I gotta call out a couple parts of the plot.
Okay.
All right. So Ash thinks Brock is wasting time at the gym and proceeds to leave, but Misty and Pikachu are inside, revealed to be inside the perfume store, admiring the variety of aromas. Misty asks about the cost, but Ash steps inside and urges her not to waste her money. The female manager confronts Ash, but he pushes it further by arguing that all perfumes are a waste and turns guys into zombies, pointing to Brock. Everyone in the store is against Ash and his remark, even his own friends, and they kick him out. Ash storms away and heads to Celadon Gym, but when he tries to enter, none of the trainers are willing to let him in, having learned about his perfume distaste since the perfume originates from the gym. Lead trainer stamps a red cross on his face before kicking him out and closing the door. So, it was actually ended up being Jesse and James that dress him up in a dress and a blonde wig. And like teach him how to change his voice so he can try and like get through the gym without being detected.
Yeah, I don't remember this episode, honestly.
Yeah, it was
sad I missed it.
It was kind of honestly the first Gen 1 anime, like amazing, like the OG, like even like going back to the very first episode when Ash is leaving. And then Gary's there, like, taunting him, and he leaves in a car followed by a bunch of cheerleaders. Like, it's so goofy. It's so funny.
Yeah, it's so good. Smell you later. And he's got his 10 gym battle, you know?
Oh, yeah. Oh, all of his gym badges.
10 gym badges in an 8 gym league, you know? That's how cool Gary
100%,
is.
100%.
I have found my blurb, by the way. Thank you to Bulbapedia. I figured I typed in X and Y.
I love Bulbapedia here. Let's go.
Okay. So, my episode is called When Light and Dark Collide. And that's because you have a regular Hawlucha and a shiny Hawlucha, which is like black and purple. When Ash and Pikachu attempt to rescue a Snubbull from a sinister Hawlucha, they accidentally injure the Gallade who's swooping in to protect Snubbull. That's when they discover that they've interrupted a rehearsal of a super Pokemon battle show. The director, Carl, explains that the show combines a battle Pokemon with a scripted storyline. But since one of his stars is injured, he'll have to call off tomorrow's performance. Bonnie has a better idea. She suggests that Ash's Hawlucha steps in to fill the role of the shining hero. Hawlucha has some trouble with the idea of a stage battle, but the show must go on. When the curtain goes up, Team Rocket tries to steal the show, but Hawlucha and Dark Hawlucha team up to blast them all. Then the two Pokemon clash with each other in an intense battle over Lady Snubbull, and the Super Pokemon Battle Show is a huge success.
I feel like that just solidified for me that actually maybe X and Y was a kind of bad anime, and it was all about the OG.
X and Y is goated. X and Y, the game is goated. X and Y, the anime is goated. Everything about it is great.
I will say the game is goated. X and Y and ORAS, so Generation 6 in general, best Pokemon games. If you disagree with me, wait a year. Fantastic. It's the best. But
so can I get since I need to give an OG answer, does Gen 2 count? Like
OG.
Okay. So I don't remember the full story plot of the episode, but the episode with the golden Noctowl, the shiny Noctowl, was my favorite because it was one of the first shinies, right? We had the pink Butterfree, which is not actually the correct shiny, but whatever.
Oh my god, that episode made me bawl my eyes out.
And you have like you have the red Gyarados from the games and stuff, but shinies are still a new concept. So there is a shiny Noctowl in the original anime, and that episode, like Noctowl, because of that episode, was my favorite Pokemon for the first, ever since Gen 2 and Gen 3 and then into Gen 4. until Lucario came out, and I watched the Lucario movie. Noctowl was my favorite Pokemon because of that episode of the anime. So that's my OG answer is the Golden Noctowl.
I feel like all of this discussion just makes me want to go watch Pokemon, because I feel like, too, if you ask me this question after watching through the entire series again, I would change my answer. But
for sure,
I feel like that's what I want to do with my night now.
Oh,
so.
you know what's a great one? Have you ever seen the I don't want to keep you here because Jay can go watch Pokemon, but the James backstory episode of how he's like actually like a super rich kid from like a really loving and like big family, but he just like wanted to be a villain, and like just like he uses like his my terrible life and he has like butlers and maids and like all these things, and like that's a great, if you're rewatching the show when you get to that episode you'll love it.
I don't remember that off the top of my head, but it reminds me of the episode where like you learn how Meowth actually learned to talk.
Yes,
and it was
that's a great one.
Girl Meow. Yeah, it was a good stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna go watch the Pokemon anime.
Okay,
so we're gonna wrap this one up. But for anyone who is still here and hasn't been running off to go binge the Pokemon anime themselves, thank you so much for getting to this point. It has been a really, really fun episode. Thanks again to Chuppa for coming on to the podcast. It's been a fun time today.
Absolutely, I've had a great time. I mean, we got over 2 hours out of a week that had nothing going on. I think we're ready for Brazil.
We're ready for all of that downtime. We're ready for all of that vamping. Let's go. So we will have another podcast episode up before we go to LAIC, so you don't have to just be listening to those in between game segments to hear us. Make sure to be tuning in again next week. Of course, make sure to be joining in on our Discord to get those votes in on what team you want to be, what Pokemon you want to see us building around for our next OHKO team. And make sure to be following the channel, liking it, and letting us know your question of the week. Thanks again so much for making it to this point. We will see you all next week. Until then, best of luck in your ranked battles. May your toxic change as indipities always get that poison.